Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing European GT3 Series Season 2 2021. And tonight marks round 8 of the 8-round series. That's right, tonight is the season finale of Season 2, and here is our schedule, all the times in British Summertime and UTC +1. We're starting a bit earlier tonight because we've got a few things to cover, but at 25 past the hour, so 25 past 7 tonight, we'll be getting underway with the driver's briefing, and immediately after we will be go for the 15-minute qualifying session at 7:30, following which we'll be getting underway with the race at 7:45, and that will be a 2-hour super endurance race, not our standard 75 minutes. Tonight's race is a full 2-hour race, after which we will bring down the curtain on the series with our final set of post-race podium interviews. Those are expected to occur sometime around 9:45 this evening. Now, of course, this series brought to you by NXTGEN Racing in collaboration with the SimGrid and Coach Dave Academy. And in the commentary box, you'll have myself, as you've had over the course of the season. That is Paul Walsh or TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending what media you follow me on. With regards to this broadcast, it's being brought to you live on 3 different media platforms as well. You can tune in via the official NXTGEN Racing YouTube channel, that's NXTGEN Racing on YouTube. Alternatively, our official Facebook group, that is NXTGEN Racing on Facebook, if you look under groups. And last but not least, you can tune in, if you're inclined, on Twitch, using my own personal Twitch channel, that is TX141 on Twitch. But it's good to be back for the season finale, and my goodness, do we have a big number of conundrums of which we need to solve tonight over the course of the 2 hours of racing. But of course, before we can get to the racing, as always, we must first come on to our principal sponsors, without whom this series would not be possible in terms of from day one in organising it, bringing it to you, and continually focusing on the live stewarding and making sure everything proceeds as planned. So without further ado, let's introduce our 2 principal sponsors, starting with the SimGrid. Now, a little bit about the SimGrid, of course. The SimGrid is a place for amateur and professional sim racers to compete against fellow drivers in leagues and endurance events for Assetto Corsa Competizione, and quite recently as well, the SimGrid has expanded into the world of R-Factor 2. But with our series being focused on Assetto Corsa Competizione on PC, that's what we're going to be focusing more on here tonight, and that is our platform, and the SimGrid have been pivotal in terms of enabling us to host the series on their website platform, their website being www.thesimgrid.com. And there's plenty of championships on there, of which we are one of the many championships on there for you. If you are an avid sim racer for Assetto Corsa Competizione, you can look and sign up, whether they are major championships for the pros, alternatively amateurs. There's something there for everyone, and the SimGrid has been there alongside us, helping us bring this championship, and we are using a number of members from their stewarding team to support us with the live stewarding and post-race stewarding, and we are very grateful to have the SimGrid working with us. On top of that as well, we must now come over to Coach Dave Academy. And Coach Dave Academy is the home of amateur and professional sim racers looking to up their game through coaching, setups and track maps. Whether you're looking to gain a whole second of time, a tenth of a second at your favourite track in your favourite car, alternatively looking to learn more about how to set up the car for a particular type of race, or just learn how to set up the car to better suit your driving style, Coach Dave Academy is the #1 place to go to, and be sure to look them up if you want to know more. And quite recently, Coach Dave Academy has expanded not just from the world of Assetto Corsa Competizione, but has expanded into the world of iRacing as well. So if any of you are avid iRacers out there, it's definitely worth checking out Coach Dave Academy. And Coach Dave Academy, in relation to us, has been helping us out with our prize pool. There have been multiple Coach Dave Academy car setups as prizes available come the end of individual races. Our race winners have been able to take away multiple Coach Dave Academy setups, and I believe come the end of the season, as well as our championship winner and the top 3, if I remember correctly, they will get in their own personally engraved trophy. They will also be getting a number of prizes from Coach Dave Academy, and it's great to have the CDA team on board, and without them we would not be able to make what is possible here today. Now, moving away from our sponsors, we just must briefly take a detour to talk about what lies ahead after tonight, because some of you may be thinking at this point, okay, well, what happens after we wrap up the season? Is that it for NXTGEN Racing on the Assetto Corsa Competizione platform on PC for the rest of 2021? Well, I'm happy to tell you no, we do have one more series in the plan, and that is the Intercontinental Challenge, which will be kicking off as of the 23rd of November 2021. A quick summary, and we'll come into the greater details themselves later on tonight, but the quick summary is the races will be held on Tuesday, starting from Tuesday 23rd of November. There will be 5 rounds in the build up to Christmas. The car class will be GT3s, much like what you're seeing here today, but the key thing is that we'll be focusing on the intercontinental circuits that are available in Assetto Corsa Competizione currently, with the track order being as follows in terms of the round list. Firstly Silverstone, then Kalami, then we've got Bathurst, Laguna Seca, and we'll be wrapping up the season in Spa, and more information will be made available in the near future. The series will have a prize pool, and that prize pool will essentially be a cash prize pool. The amounts are to be confirmed, and we'll talk more about that later, but on top of that as well, the series will be live streamed, and it will be myself in the commentary box for that series, and also it'll be live stewarded, much like what you've come to know with regards to the stewarding of the Next Gen Racing GT3 Championships on Assetto Corsa Competition. Over the majority of this year, we've had that continuous stewarding, and it has helped to add even more drama, and in some days even more fairness and safety to the racing over the course of the individual races, with live stewards keeping their eyes on everything that's going on. But we'll talk more about this later on tonight, but we just wanted to put it out there and let you know, if you are interested in getting involved and you weren't able to make it into Season 2 of the GT3 series, but you're thinking, how can I potentially get involved in a future series? Then this is your major opportunity, and we will talk more about that in a brief while. Now, coming away from what lies ahead to the here and now, we have gone through 7 of our 8 rounds. We started off in Donington, we then went to Zolder, to Brands Hatch, to Monza, back to Silverstone, to Alton Park, to Paul Ricard, and now we are at the Nürburgring. That's right, we're in Germany for the season finale. It's the 26th of October 2021. It is the 8th Tuesday on our race calendar, and we couldn't ask for a better circuit, although we do have some very interesting conditions out there. More on those in a minute. And over the course of the 8 rounds, we have seen our drivers put to the test on all of the 7 circuits so far, and coming up to this 8th round now, every bit of knowledge, every bit of competitive integrity, every ounce of strength, and also in terms of determination, will now be put to the test at a circuit which is known to be one that can crown a championship or see a championship fall by the wayside. And speaking of the championship, let's take a look at those standings. Now, here are our top 10, of course, and really the story of the top 10 has been the championship battle between our top 2. Our Spaniard of Andrés Mesa from Distinct GG racing in the Aston Martin Racing V8 Vantage, currently leading the championship on 479 points, and after what was an absolutely dominant display at the French circuit of Paul Ricard last time around, winning the end by over 20 seconds ahead of the rest of the field, you can imagine that Mesa would love to wrap up things tonight with another win and take home that championship crown. However, he has been hotly pursued with only a 6-point advantage over the Briton, that is Harry Phillips, racing the Bentley Continental GT3 2018 machine for the Wild Things Racing team, and these two have literally been neck on results throughout the season. And to give you an idea, over the course of 7 rounds, both drivers have picked up 3 wins apiece, and both drivers have finished on the podium 6 times out of 7, and when they haven't been on the podium, they have both finished 4th. That's how close it is. The only delta between the two, and why Mesa's got slightly more points, is the fact that Harry Phillips has not picked up as many P2s as Andrés, and that is the difference between the two of them. It is literally in the number of P2 finishes. Otherwise, they are practically neck and neck, and that has been the story of this whole season, and we are going to see how it all ends tonight. Meanwhile, in P3 there, we can see Ralf Piringer on 433 points. The BMW M6 driver from the Oculus Visor powered by BMW Motorsport team, doing a phenomenal job in rounding off the best of the rest position. And whilst he is still theoretically within reach of the rest of the top 10, particularly Markus Fox and Paco Lara in P4 and P5 respectively, that delta there of what is the best part of 36 points is going to be a major delta to overcome. And we are expecting that Piringer will be crowned P3 in the championship come the end of the race and come the checkered flag tonight. But again, in motorsport, anything can happen, so we won't count on that happening until it does happen in reality. But more importantly, the battle for P4 with Markus Fox there in P4 in the Porsche 911 GT3R 2019 machine, having picked up that 8th place last time out at Paul Ricard, which was not perhaps the result he was looking for. It does mean that he is now vulnerable, 27 points ahead, but he is vulnerable to Paco Lara, who really has come alive over the second half of the season. And it is the case that the Spaniard there in the McLaren 720 SGT3 has found themselves batting all the way up into the top 5, and will Lara be able to make it a top 5 finish come the end of the season? After what was a very strong qualifying session at Paul Ricard, but a disastrous race compared to their qualifying position in the end. And when I say disastrous, they still finished P6, mind, but it was not the race they were looking for, I suspect. And can they end with a top 5 finish tonight and make it 2 top 5s over 3 top 5s, I should say, over 8 races? Meanwhile, in P6, we've got Martin Ulrik there on 358 points, and it is the case the M Technology driver has been doing a very strong job of keeping everybody else honest in the top 10, and Ulrik really has come alive in the last 3 races with 3 P5 finishes back-to-back from Silverstone to Alton Park to Paul Ricard, and can Ulrik make it a 4th on the bounce and really show that consistent form in the Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo? Or will it be the case that we see the return of Kieran Prendergast tonight, who's dropped down to P7, having not participated at Paul Ricard, and also that disastrous result back at what was Monza? Will we see Prendergast return and potentially take the fight back up into the top 5 come the end of the standings? Renault finished there in P8 as well on 313 points, are looking to hold off Fabio Kina and Andre Jacquelin, who are in P9 and P10 respectively, with their finish having an 11-point advantage over Kina and a further, what is the best part of 30 or so points over Andre Jacquelin. But more importantly, looking at P10, you can see Andre Jacquelin, the Slovenian there in the Aston Martin Racing at V8 Vantage on 278 points. He is the last of our top 10 right now, having crept into the top 10. And as we look over to our standings from P11 to P20, we do have a major question about Jacquelin and whether he is going to be secure there tonight. Because whilst Emil Blaine unfortunately will not be joining us tonight, the Danishman will be sitting in the standings, as unfortunately will be sitting in the sidelines, I should say, and perhaps up in the gantry or the standings. The Dane has got a number of technical issues which he has not been able to resolve in the build up to tonight, so we're going to be missing Blaine, but it is the opportunity for the likes of Walter Lux, Christian Ablasser, Ant Brown, Eduardo Tripiani, you name it, all these guys in the run down to P20, minus Ethan Faulkner, of course, who has retired from the series, and Chris McKenna, who will not be joining us tonight, unfortunately, due to circumstances. It will be a major opportunity for a good number of drivers to come fighting up through the field and have a shot at P10 should Jacquelin drop the ball. And we can see there the inter-battle between our drivers in the top 20 there, particularly between Christian Ablasser, Ant Brown, Eduardo Tripiana, all separated by the best part. The 3 of them there separated by a region of only 21 points. And how will it go down between them tonight? That is the big question. The same applies for Robert Velkoski versus Max Malliard, with Malliard gradually coming to form over the course of the remainder of the season after some fantastic finishes, his most notable one being at the P11 at Monza, of course. Can Malliard compound his P11 at Monza, add to the P15 that he got last time out of Paul Ricard, and potentially take the place off of Velkoski come the checker flag, only 9 points between them? And also Paul Scott there, only 2 points off of Max Malliard in the McLaren 720S GT3. Can the Briton find his way up into the better portion of the top 20 come the end tonight? We then look outside of our top 20, looking into our top 30, and here are our remaining drivers in the series effectively outside of those who have retired. We can see the South African there of Gareth Mills in P21 on 192 points. Of course, only the best part of what is 6 points off of Paul Scott. And can we see Gareth Mills potentially getting himself into the top 20 come the end of tonight? And that would be a fantastic achievement for the McLaren driver if he were able to do so. We also have Gaz Williams there in P22. Gaz, of course, finishing on the podium for the first time at Paul Ricard, and indeed Gaz having only joined us midway through the series, joined us as of round number 4 at Monza. It is the case that Williams has been very strong in that Bentley Continental GT3, and I think been chasing after, I should say, Harry Phillips to an extent. Further down from there, we have Sylvain Pastoris, of course, on 173 points, the P23 driver, the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo driver. And as we continue to look down, we can see there the fight between Pastoris, Korogowski, Daniel Korogowski in P24, and also Jesse Monroe's the BMW M6 driver, who'll be looking to try and get one final good result to get himself closer to that top 20 come at the end of the proceedings. We've also got Lucas Seedor there on 152 points, who recently has not been able to take part in races, and unfortunately has dropped further down the order after a very strong start to the season. And as we continue to go down, some drivers who we've lost over the course of the season, such as Adrian Loisinger there in P28. And we do, of course, have the return once again of Nestor Magia tonight in P29, and it will be the case the El Salvadorian will be looking to have another decent race and try to get some good points after a strong performance in the wet a while back. Well, not the wet, but it was a strong performance in the dry, I should say, at Alton Park. And will he be able to use the wet conditions today, which we are hearing have just come over the circuit, in order to be able to get himself a little bit further up the field, having made his debut in Assetto Corsa Competizione and being a relative rookie of the field? But he's on what is 124 points right now. And could we also see our P30 man Timofey there, the only Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo driver to take part in this series? Will he be returning and trying to get some more points on the board? Outside of our top 30, we can see there, now we come to the drivers who have retired from the series, but we should not forget about the likes of Brandon Warren, the Nissan GTR and Nismo GT3 driver, who did a fantastic job in the Nissan GTR, but unfortunately was not able to take part in the full season due to a clash with personal circumstances. We can also see there Daniel Tran in P32, the Half-Life Racing driver, who joined us midway through, and unfortunately is not with us at this time. We've also got Martin Pafusen, Victor Tolera, Marco Ticini, Tom Gander, Ollie Moss, Chris Wall, Alex Ward, Chris Bell, and as we come down to the final portion of our standings here, Ali El Sarge, Simon Huber and Alwyn Reed, 3 drivers who have not been able to take part, unfortunately due to a clash in personal circumstances, but we should still make a mention too. And coming away from our standings then to the circuit, we are at the Nürburgring GP Strecker, or the World Endurance Circuit, the WC variant, and as essentially it is the Grand Prix circuit, except rather than having the slow version of the Vidal chicane, we are having the fast version. This circuit consists of 16 corners, as shown on the circuit diagram here, provided to us by Jacko's Paddock Motorsport, a brilliant website for all resources to do with motorsport if you want to check them out. And it is the case, we are in the Nürburgring region of Germany for a circuit which, as I said previously, has seen the crowning and also the downfall of multiple championships throughout the years, and this is a very challenging circuit. There's a little bit of everything here, whether it's straight line speed in the run out the Coca-Cola curve of turn 16 all the way down to turn 1. It's low speed handling through the Mercedes arena, that's turns 1 through to 5, and then you've got medium speed handling from turn 6 all the way through to essentially turn 15. A whole mixture of corners there, multiple hairpins as well. We do effectively have 3 hairpins at this circuit, turns 1, 8 and 16, and you do have the Schumacher S, of course, turns 9 to 10, a rather legendary sequence of corners named after the legend himself, Michael Schumacher, and a sequence of corners we'll be expecting a lot of sparks to fly as we do get ready to go racing. Now, checking in with race control at this point, we're not hearing anything from the time being with regards to our proceedings being delayed or anything along those lines. We are looking to be good to go. So as a result, as we continue to check through the rules, we have some slightly different rules for tonight. And that is that whilst we still have that general rule of the balance of performance, the BOP that we're using for all cars featured in this series, being the base 2020 variant, as included in the Assetto Corsa Competizione simulation, in the race, because we are looking at a 2-hour race, 120 minutes, not the standard 75 minutes over the first 7 rounds. There will be 2 mandatory pit stops tonight, which will require fuel to be taken on board, 1 litre of fuel a minimum over the course of the pit stops, and still, changing tyres is optional, but we suspect the majority of our drivers will change their tyres at some point in the race, simply because it is such a long race. On top of that, there is no defined pit window. Our drivers may choose when to pit, and that, of course, give them the options with respect to trying to undercut or overcut other drivers, and in such tricky conditions. As we look to our live cameras right now, you can see the rain has really come onto the circuit. We've got a lot of clouds over the Nürburgring circuit, and as a result, it is going to be treacherous. And indeed, that will make things ever more difficult. As we take a look at our championship leader right now, that's Andrés Mesa, who's currently parked up the Distinct GG driver, and he will be thinking tonight that he doesn't need to win this race in order to be crowned champion. He just needs to finish 1 place behind this man here, Harry Phillips. And if he does so, he will take the crown home. Conversely, of course, if Harry Phillips were to win, and Andrés Mesa was to finish 2 positions or more behind, then it will be the way of Harry Phillips that the championship goes. Indeed, the Briton will be hoping that he's able to take that fight and indeed take the win of the race as a minimum, and then put everything into Andrés Mesa's hands in terms of whether he's going to be coming home with that championship and finishing behind in P2. But that will be the big change, of course. Harry Phillips has got his work cut out for him today. He will need to win this one as a minimum to take home that crown. Of course, unless one of the drivers, say Andrés Mesa, has a disaster of a race and Harry Phillips were to finish well, or conversely the other way round, then we'd see a number of different permutations. But we are expecting the 2 of them to be right up there in terms of qualifying and in the race pace, and as a result, that is why we're basing it on them finishing both in terms of the podium positions. But as we look around the field right now, we can see that we do have a field of 21 drivers currently here at the circuit. We are expecting up to potentially 25 drivers coming back for tonight for the season finale. We've got 22 in fact. As we see, we've had Paul Scott just join us. We've also had Sylvain Pastores just join us. It's good to see the Rinaldi Racing driver back out here once again at the Swiss. And whilst we are waiting for that driver's briefing in approximately 5 minutes time, we are just checking in with race control once again with respect to what is going on at the moment. And I am hearing that it's thumbs up on the front here. Everything everything is good right now. We are looking good to go racing as per our currently planned schedule, so that is absolutely fantastic. And as we continue to look around here, we have Jesse Monroe's making his way across that timeline, the BSP Racing driver, and heading down towards turn 1. But whilst we are waiting, of course, let's check in with you guys and girls in the chat. And we can see we've got CJ Mac, that's Chris McKenna in the YouTube chat. CJ Mac 92 saying, good evening, Paul. Wishing you all a great final round. I wish I could be racing. Hope to see some post-season donuts at the end of the race. Indeed, we are hoping to see some potential donuts, because remembering that our drivers will not be using these cars, well, at least they will be able to take different cars that come future series should they plan to return. And of course, we have that Intercontinental Championship coming up, so it will be the case that these cars will be put back in the garages and they can probably burn the tyres come at the end of tonight. And of course, we will be missing you, Chris, but at the same time, we're glad to have you tuning in. And we can also see there's Zeronic in the Twitch chat waving to us, and we wave back to you, Zeronic, and we hope you're doing well. Alan Baldwin there in the YouTube chat as well. We hope you're doing well, Alan, and you're enjoying yourself. We've got Matt Emmons as well, saying that Katie Eames, this should be good to watch in the Facebook chat, and I believe Matt and Katie are going to be tuning in. And Katie Eames saying in the Facebook chat as well that she's been enjoying Tuesday nights and should be a good one tonight. Indeed, we are expecting a cracking one. And speaking of Matt Emmons, I believe we have a particular driver joining us very shortly. I am seeing at the moment on my entry list, we may have Matt Emmons actually join us as a guest driver for tonight. So as a result, to clarify what that means in terms of guest drivers, it is going to be a situation that if Matt Emmons does turn up, it will be that he's going to be racing. Of course, he'll only be racing for the one round, so he's not going to have any major implications on the championship, but we may indeed have the Briton join us. Perhaps he's got out from behind the viewing position. He's decided that enough's enough. He wants to get out there as well. Matt Emmons, of course, being one of our racers in the iRacing series, and perhaps he will be making his debut tonight in the ACC series, but we will wait and see. As we can also see, we have Next Gen Ultra in the YouTube chat saying good evening and standing correctly. We have had a brief correction about the Intercontinental series, that Silverstone will be swapped out for Suzuka. We'll come back to that later, of course, but we will talk more about that in due time, as I do believe at this point in time, as we do try to get there is Matt Emmons, ladies and gentlemen, the M&V Esports driver, is joining us for tonight, and we look forward to seeing him out on circuit. He'll be bringing the McLaren 720S, and this is a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. We will have 23 drivers as it currently stands, and we can also see Emil Blaine there in the YouTube chat saying gutted he can't race tonight. He's hoping for a thriller, and indeed we all are. Everybody here, I think, is looking forward to what could happen, but right now the big question really stands on this final practice session: who's looking hot and who's not? And we are seeing that it is our championship leader right now of Andrés Mesa, who has really set the bar very high already in this final practice session with a 2-minute 1.194, the best part of 4.5 tenths ahead of the next fastest time, as set by Gaz Williams, or Gazza as he's known to his friends, the Briton in the Bentley Continental, making his way into the final corner there, turn 16 Coca-Cola curve, and you can see Gaz doing everything he can right now to perhaps set the apple cart a little bit and have a shot at finishing on the podium once again. And he really has been, as we caught up with him at Paul Ricard, of course, in the post-race interview, very pleased with his performance so far. Indeed, with that P3 at Paul Ricard, after being the driver who went the longest of anybody before pitting at Paul Ricard. Of course, it's going to be a bit different tonight with the fact we do have the 2 pit stops rather than just the 1, but you can imagine that Williams will do everything he can to get another podium. And another driver, of course, who you may remember was talking about going for podiums, or at least for top 5s, it was Walter Lux at Paul Ricard, and it was a situation where Lux put in an absolutely phenomenal qualifying session to see it fall apart in the race and for him to fall down the order, but he was aiming for a top 5 in the last 2 races of the season. And could we see the McLaren driver potentially get himself well up there? Well, right now, based on the time he's set in this final practice session, it's not looking to be the case. But again, we saw that at Paul Ricard, Lux was not the fastest in the practice session, he wasn't up there, and he suddenly materialised in the qualifying session itself. So we could expect some magic from the number 530 car, the TUG Racing Esport driver, but we'll wait and see. As we see parked alongside him is Gareth Mills there, the GM Racing machine, the South African machine, with that rather fetching livery, and the one that does really stand out, and we look forward to seeing what Mills is able to do here once again tonight. As we are now just getting ready for the driver brief, and I'm hearing that the majority of our drivers are starting to crowd in to the driver's briefing room, of course the virtual room on Discord server, which whilst we can't show you that room and we haven't got a mock-up of what the room would look like if it was in the real world, we will be very shortly getting underway with that driver's briefing. As we can see, the majority of our drivers have head to the pits. We've we've got Andrew Jacklin here, of course, the Food Point Racing driver, making his way down towards the turn 8 hairpin right now, just getting in that final practice lap before we get ready for that driver's briefing and qualifying. But as we look away from the circuit and get ready for the driver's briefing, it will be brought to you, as always, by Kevin Smith, the NXTGEN Racing Assetto Corsa Competizione GT3 organiser. We've just hopped into the briefing room as well, and I'm just going to sit in the back of the room here, and you can imagine everybody just sat right now waiting for Kevin to come in and lay down the law, as everybody just patiently waits for the big man to come on in. But in the meantime, we'll be checking in with you guys and girls in the chat. Nothing else from you so far, but to all of those of you tuning in, I hope you've had a great start to your week, you're all doing well, and that you're excited for racing tonight. We are just waiting for Kevin Smith to join us in the room right now. We've just got a brief moment or two. It is 25 past the hour, so I suspect he will be very shortly coming in. We've got the majority of our drivers in there as well. I think some drivers are just finishing off their final practice laps. We'll wait and see. As we are continuing to wait here, it's going to be one of those situations where we are just being a little bit patient right now, and everybody's itching to get out of the way. I can see Kevin Smith has just entered the room, and I think very shortly he will start to give the overview of the rules for tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to NXTGEN Racing for the final 2-hour round at the Nürburgring for what is going to be a very wet race by the looks of the weather. There's just a couple of things to go over. We had no incidents or appeals submitted last week, so we don't need to run over any of that. Tonight as well, with it being a wet race, it is 2 hours long as well, with it being the season finale. We would like to ask you all to please bear this in mind. It's a long race. There's no need to be trying to make any aggressive moves in the first couple of laps, especially when the tyres are cold, if you haven't managed to get them up to temperature. Pit entry and pit exit, please obviously keep your cars behind the white lines until you are past the entry and exit line. Of course, pit exit, into turn 1, cars are coming down there at full speed into the braking zone, and we don't want to see any collisions caused there. There is 2 mandatory pit stops tonight. And just a quick one on this, there will be a very short server reset after the driver's briefing. And as soon as all drivers are back in the server, we will forwards to qualifying. This is due to a technical issue on our end where it hasn't actually counted for 2 pit stops, and we do apologise. Other than that, everyone, if anyone has any questions, please post them in the chat. If not, you're free to leave the room and we'll get the server reset and racing underway.
So we heard there from Kevin Smith, our ACC GT3 organiser for NXTGEN Racing, with regards to...
You're now free to leave the room, everyone.
We heard there from Kevin Smith, but one question was raised with regards to pit stops for fuel and tyres from Harry Phillips, which I think is going to be answered very shortly. Otherwise, there from Kevin Smith. Okay, so fuel only as always. Tyres are driver's choice. So as we said earlier, it is the situation where our drivers can run the entire race on a single pair of tyres if they so desire. But otherwise, we will have those 2 mandatory pit stops, and we are going to have a server reset very shortly. So as a result, ladies and gentlemen, it will be the case that we will be right back in a brief while. But before we do, to summarise what Kevin was saying there, so we do have 2 pit stops. I need to take on fuel in the pits. There's no need to change tyres if not required. And on top of that, our drivers must respect the pit entry and pit exit lines, particularly the pit exit line going down into the turn 1 hairpin. Our drivers who leave the pits will need to stay over to the right and obey that line to avoid any major incidents. Without further ado, we will be right back, ladies and gentlemen, approximately 2 minutes, and we'll be getting underway with the qualifying session to set the field for the race. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back then. The server has been rebooted and everybody is now rejoining in preparation for qualifying. Any moment we will be getting underway with the 15-minute qualifying session, as I believe everybody has rejoined. We're not seeing any further issues being raised. It is the case that we are going to be go very shortly, unless there's anything unexpected here. But it's all looking green, we're all looking good, and we are excited to see who is going to be on pole for the final race of the season. It would seem that it's likely to be one of our regulars, or at least we're expecting our regulars to be right up the front there, but we'll have to wait and find out. It's one thing to get on pole in dry conditions. In these tricky wet conditions, it's an entirely different thing. And with regards to the circuit itself, as we see, we have had the switch over for qualifying. It is the case that we've got the green light to go racing. We now see all of our drivers make their way out of the pit lane, and well, you can imagine 15 minutes, who's going to be on pole? Let's find out. This circuit, we're not known as favouring any car in particular. We know that certain cars will enjoy the circuit a little bit more, such as the Mercedes, but every car here has the opportunity to be on pole. Who's going to do it? Let's see. So as they all make their way out of the pits, we can see Paul Scott deciding to stay in the pits for the time being, giving himself some space, as meanwhile Gaz Williams makes his way down towards turn 1, and everyone trying to get out there nice and early, trying to get themselves plenty of time out on circuit to be able to get the tyres up to temperature and also shift some of the water about and start to form that dry line, which may be useful for getting slightly optimised lap times. But of course, remember, as the dry line starts to form, there's less water on the circuit, and it can mean that those tyre temperatures come up quite rapidly. And we are expecting right now the rain to be very consistent for the purposes of this qualified session. We are expecting a constant stream of rain for the next 30 minutes, and as this qualifying session is half that time, we're not going to be seeing the circuit dry up suddenly, although we will get a brief dry line start to appear over the course of that qualifying session, and it's when that dry line's at its optimum point that our drivers will need to nail it. As we look around the field right now, we can see Max Maliar making his return. Of course, another 404 car, the Jochensweiser, powered by BMW, number 2 driver here. The German making his way down towards the turn 8 hairpin here. And as he comes on through, looking very composed right now. And you'll remember, some of you, Maliar and also his teammate, of course, Piringer, working together at Paul Ricard as best they could in the qualifying session. It didn't quite work out in the end, with one of the two drivers having a nightmare run through the long right hand, following the long straight of Paul Ricard and almost losing the car. Both drivers almost ends up in a collision between one another, but we can imagine that tonight they may try to work some magic together again, or they'll run separately, as we do see quite a traffic jam now starting to form, with Ulrik there in that traffic jam as well, the M Technology driver, as everybody's now starting to queue up in the run through turn 12 down towards 13, heading up towards Vidal here, trying to give themselves a little bit of space to drive in front, as we do see an Aston Martin just roaring its way through and saying, you know what, I don't care for the queue, and just making their way through. And meanwhile, Nesta Magia here coming around through turn 8 right now, the Rasket Racing driver doing everything they can in the build-up tonight. And I did have the chance to catch up with the Salvadorian in the build-up to getting in the car tonight, and what he was saying to me was that despite the bad results he's had so far, he has enjoyed the season and he's learned a lot. He hasn't had too much time to practice tonight because he started working last week, but he's hoping to put on a good show out here tonight, and because in the last time we was in the rain, it was a good performance for him, so he's expecting to be fighting for the top 15 to top 20 and carrying all the knowledge that he's picked up so far into this race, and all the knowledge he takes from tonight he'll take into next season. So I think Magia is going to be rejoining us for the future championship, the Intercontinental Championship, which will be fantastic, and we look forward to seeing the number 8 driver doing what he can, as he does run a little bit high there on the apex curve of turn 14 and makes his way up towards 16 right now to go on to his first flying lap. And speaking of flying lap, let's jump on board here and give you a view of what it's like around the Nürburgring circuit. Charging all the way down towards turn number 1 then, building up speed towards top gear, and he'll be looking for his brake marker on the left hand side, looking for that 100 metre board in particular, before stamping on the anchors and bringing the car hard down to first gear, turn it into the hairpin. Now as he clears the apex, he'll gradually build up the throttle here, let the traction control kick in and build up to second gear before turning through turn 2, through the Mercedes arena now, a bit wide of apex there, but getting the car nicely steady down into turn 3, a long corner here, a very late apex, trail braking as deep as he possibly can, coming down to second gear before flicking the car from left to right for the purposes of turns 4 and 5, 4 being the main right hander, and then carrying through for the extension of that right hander makes turn 5, and now charging down towards turn 6 here as he builds up the speed before coming down into third gear for turn number 6, keeping it nice and tight so he can go over to the left hand side, widening his rotation for the turn 7 corner here, coming down to second and getting on that power as early as possible to push out to the corner before making the run down towards the turn 8 hairpin. Building up the speed once again here, heading up into 5th gear before now coming down on the brakes, coming all the way down to second gear, perhaps even first gear for some drivers here at the hairpin, depending on their car and their approach. But as he makes his way out to turn 8, he now builds up the speed, heading up towards the Schumacher S here. Turns 9 and 10, likely a small lift here as he makes his way on through. You can see just a little bit of understeer on the initial turn in there. The tyre's not quite providing the grip he was hoping for, and as he makes his way out towards turn 11, a heavy braking zone coming all the way down from 5th gear to 3rd gear as he makes his way into that tight apex, rides a bit high on the curve, but he's able to use it to his advantage, and now comes through turn at number 12. Patience game here, waiting for it and then getting on the throttle as soon as he can as he sees clear of the apex before coming down towards Vidal. Before he does that, he's got to make his way flat through 13, and as he comes through the right hander, now getting ready for the medium speed chicane that is Vidal as he comes up into 14, braking at what will be that 50-metre board, coming down to 3rd gear and putting it very nicely between the two apexes there, just tapping both apexes of 14 and 15 before braking for the final hairpin corner. A very aggressive line there, pointing the car towards the corner, and as he comes out and makes his way across that timeline, this is going to be a reasonable lap from the Salvadoran. And what's it going to be for his first qualifying lap? As he comes across that timeline, it is going to be P14 provisional, a 205.0, a good lap there, and definitely going to put him somewhere in the midfield come the end of this qualifying session. But meanwhile, as the first laps are coming in, we look from our driver who's in P15 to our driver who's taken provisional pole so far, and that is of course our championship leader of Andrés Mesa, the distinct GG driver, on a 201.551, not quite there with his lap that we saw in the final practice session, that 201.194. But still, I think Mesa's got a couple of laps worth of fuel in there and looking to build up to that ultimate lap to put this qualifying session to bed. And when I had the chance to catch up to the Spaniard in the preparation for tonight, what he was saying to me is that he's hoping tonight to have an uneventful race, although he doesn't expect that to be easy due to these tricky conditions, and be able to get the second place that he needs to wrap up this championship. Of course, assuming that Harry Phillips were to finish first ahead of him. But however, what he was also saying is that he will still go for the win if he has the chance. So you can imagine the Spaniard, whilst he would love to secure this championship, by having an easy race in terms of not having to worry too much about managing the circumstances with his main championship rival, if he sees that opportunity to go for the win, he will go for it. And we have seen that from Andrés Mesa. When he's up against it, when his back's been up against the wall, he has been like a bull to a matador, to that red cape. He has gone and hunted it ferociously. And for someone of his calibre, you can imagine that tonight he will pull out all the stops to be able to do everything he can to make sure that he does not finish behind this man here in the championship, if not out on circuit. But as we see the Wild Things Racing driver right now, Harry Phillips, currently 7.5 tenths off a provisional pole, as Andrés Mesa has improved to a 201.131, and we're already ahead of that time we saw in practice. Is the case that Phillips right now is having to find a little bit more time out on circuit, and conversely, look at this for provisional P2 right now, only the best part of half a tenth ahead of Phillips. But it is the case that Martin Ulrik having a very good qualifying session so far on what is a 201.842, and that is 7 tenths off a provisional pole. But indeed, Ulrik really putting himself in there and showing that Mercedes to work well at the Nürburgring circuit in these conditions. And to be fair, we did see that in season 1 with the 2019 balance of performance. We saw that the AMG drives really came alive in the wet conditions at the Nürburgring in that season, and it does look as though that's translated through into the 2020 balance of performance, as we see Ulrik making his way down towards turn 8 right now and having a good day at the office as it currently stands. Could we see Ulrik be on that front row? That would be a fantastic way to kick off his season finale. But meanwhile, as we look from Ulrik around the field, one driver who we need to come on to, and of course qualifying is going to be critical for his chances in the race and holding on to his top 10, his P10 in the championship come the end of tonight. That's the Slovenian of Andre Jacklin. And what the Food Point Racing driver was saying to me as I had the chance to catch up to him as he was making his way into the car and they were strapping him into the harness, was that he was saying that it's been a fantastic season, and for his final goal he's going to have as much fun as he possibly can in these tricky rainy conditions. He hopes that next season will be fun as this one, and he'd like to thank all racers for their great battles and hopes that he'll be able to race against them once again in future seasons to come with Next Gen. And that's fantastic to hear many drivers saying that in the build up to tonight. I heard down in the paddock, whilst I didn't get the chance to catch up with too many, is that they've really enjoyed the racing over the course of the season. And to those who were not able to take part tonight, such as Emil Blaine and Chris McKenna, heard great things from them as well, how much they've enjoyed things. Now they're tuning in, of course, and we've also heard from the likes of, say, Markus Fox and Ulrik as well, who on reflection have really enjoyed their seasons. And speaking of Fox, here is the wily Fox as he makes his way down towards turn 1, currently provisional P8, the Porsche 911 driver, of course, well, the Porsche 99 one driver, I should really say, the Fox Sim Racing team driver, as he makes his way through turn 1, looking rather smooth so far, and I think he'll be targeting the top 10 in this qualifying session. That's where he's practically been all the way through the season in terms of qualifying. But you have to imagine that right now he's got a long way to go from that 202.775 in order to get closer to the other drivers around him. Well, indeed, that 202.571, I should really say, what the fact that we do have a Ralf Piringer just ahead of him right now. The BMW M6 driver here, who is currently provisional P7 on what is a 202.487, putting in a strong performance in this qualifying session for a car which we suspect he goes a bit deep there into turn 8 and runs wide, but gets the car back together. We would expect the BMW is going to struggle quite a bit in these conditions, for the simple reason you can imagine with its whopping V8 and the twin turbo underneath the front of that car. It is a situation right now where he's got a lot of power, but he's got to find a way to deploy it. But he's doing a good job of deploying it so far, as we do see that Ant Brown, a driver who revels in these conditions, the Co-Brown driver, the Briton, making his way through turn 12 right now, and it is the case. He's currently provisional P5. Will he be able to keep it there but come at the end of this qualifying session? Because right now, if that's the case, this is going to look a very strong qualifying session. Indeed, a good chance for him to pick up some major points in the season finale. As he comes up into Vidal right now, looks very composed, albeit goes a little bit deep into 14 and has to collect the car through 15 to avoid running high onto the apex curb of 15. As we see, Harry Phillips has come into the pits, and meanwhile Gaz Williams has now dethroned Martin Ulrik from what is a provisional P2, and indeed Harry Phillips has followed him through there, but we can see still Williams the best part of 3.5 tenths of Andrés Mesa, and Phillips only a further 10th back. This is looking very tight as we see Gaz Williams comes into the pit and decides to change tyres and put a bit more fuel in the car with only a little bit more of qualifying remain. Now the rain is continuing its intensity right now, and we can see there is a bit of a dry line starting to form out on circuit. Oh goodness me, I think that's a there, who's gone a little bit deep into what was turn number 11, I think, to take some evasive manoeuvres with cars coming up on through behind. But looking around right now, our driver who is last in this qualifying session right now is Matt Emmons, who is actually just parked in the pits. I think he might not be taking part in qualifying for the simple reason that he's deciding to start from the back. He may have been told to start from the back. I'm not sure what's happened there, but we can see in terms of drivers who've yet to set a time, it's Matt Emmons and Eduardo Tripiana, the Spaniard here, making his way through the Schumacher and going very wide. They're trying to carry too much speed into turn 9. I think he just needs to cool it down a little bit and try and get a time on the board, because it's Zafar Atos right now who's coming into the pits. The GPFR driver, the Frenchman, making his way into the pits right now, and he is our slowest recorded time of 206.054, which, to be fair, when I say it's the slowest time, it's still a very impressive time as he jumps back to his pit garage as he's come into the pits right now. Drivers are legally allowed to do that, of course, and he is only the best part of what is a second off of Victor Tolera. But for a number of our drivers here, I do think it's the case that they're just trying to get some times in, and they'll look to pick up places in the race by being consistent, because over the 2 hours anything can happen. We could have dry weather suddenly come in, we could have even more intense rain, or you name it, it can happen. And indeed, when we were last here, we had 2 major incidents in the Mercedes arena on the opening lap, which saw our pole sitter, if I remember correctly, or at least one of our drivers who started on the front row, drop to the back of the field and have to make a major recovery drive. And I think that was Ethan Faulkner who had to make a recovery drive out of the race and did so. As we see, Robert Velkoski has headed to the pit. The back to motion driver, I think this may be the end of his qualifying session unless they get that car out very quickly. Number 46 driver start currently P10 on a 202.724. But right now, as we look back to our Spaniard, who is holding on to that pole position for the time being, we can see as he roars his way down towards turn number 11, it's looking good. The omens are looking in his favour right now as he comes through turn 11 and into turn 12. What will happen in the remaining 2 minutes? Effectively, everybody's now on their final pair of flying laps, if not building up to their final flying lap, as we do see Paco Lara has come up to P4. He's got ahead of Martin Ulrik right now. And Ulrik has not improved off that 201.842 that he set to get himself into P2 earlier on. As we see Lara, they're going a bit so, oh goodness me, and the car's gone there. The rear end just not settling, and that McLaren, the prototype racing team driver, hitting the wall there as well. That McLaren, I think, is out of this qualifying session, and Lara is going to have to settle for what was a 201.776, which is still a very impressive lap, to be fair. But Lara there having an absolute nightmare moment, pushing a bit too hard. And now, can Ulrik potentially jump ahead of the McLaren driver driver, and Ant Brown as well here. We can see the Britain, he's currently P6. He's on a 202.247 as we see it's Fabio Kina who's moved up to P6 there, having just crossed the line. The Tamir Racing driver from Switzerland who's gone up there. He's only a second off of provisional pole right now on a 202.121, but there are lap times coming. He's going on to one final lap here, and as he makes his way up through the Mercedes arena through turn 2 right now, you can imagine that for a lot of these drivers, these conditions are presenting a brilliant opportunity to get further up the field, and some drivers who gained, others are losing out massively, and right now you have to feel that really the one driver who's lost out massively as a result of this qualifying session, indeed the conditions, are the likes of Ralf Piringer, who's all the way down in P9, the German, but he's on his final flying lap right now, and also Markus Fox, who we're not seeing on camera, who's in P10. Those two are normal regulars up towards the top 5, and right now they're just trying to hold on to a place in the top 10 as we see Piringer here making his way all the way through. Oh, goodness me, and Piringer there with just one wheel on the grass, I think, as he tried to turn into Vidal, going in for a spin, and we've got yellow flags now at the Vidal chicane, but fortunately he's rejoined the circuit. Oh, and it's not working out for Piringer as he has to head back off the circuit, and we can see that we do have one of our Aston Martin racing drivers coming through, and I think that's Christian Ablasser making his way through, the TG Racing Esports green driver as he comes through, currently provisional P13. He won't have been hampered by the yellow flag there as he makes his way across that timeline. He does improve by a tenth to a 203.018, but it doesn't move him up the field as he comes across that timeline, and the checkered flag in this qualifying session is now out. Will we see any faster lap times? Well, Ant Brown has come into the pits. He will not be promoted from P7. Velkoski's in. He's from P11. Zafratos is in P23 still, and Matt Emmons is the only driver to have not set a time. He'll be starting P24, as we do see Walter Lux has come into the pit, so he will not be improving from what is P9. And meanwhile, we look up there, we see Andrés Mesa has come across that time, and he did not improve on that lap. He practically matched his best qualifying lap. Gaz Williams as well, his best is P2. What about Harry Phillips here? He's currently on a lap. He's going through turn, I believe that's turn 12 there, no, that's turn 7 there, based on the camera angle, and as he makes his way now down towards turn 8. This is do or die in terms of the qualifying session now for the Wild Things Racing driver, because if he's starting on that second row, he's going to have to find a way to get ahead of Gaz Williams to chase after Mesa, and right now, based on this qualifying pace alone, you would imagine the Spaniard has definitely got an advantage of a couple of attempts over the Bentley driver as we see him make his way up the hill here. Of course, he'll be gunning it right now. He will literally give this lap everything he possibly can beyond wiping the car out, because he needs to be on that front row as a minimum in order to have the best possible chance of battling the Aston Martin driver down into turn 1. But as they make their way around right now, you can see it's the case. He's continuing to build up through turn 12. He's only got 4 more corners to go, 13, 14, 15 and 16, and as he makes his way through 13 here, will we see Phillips improve, or will it be the case that it's not going to be enough? He comes up towards Vidal here. It's going to be full commitment through the chicane as he makes his way through, riding high on the apex curbs there of both and right on the limit. A very smooth drive through there. Now through the final corner he comes, takes it as aggressively as he can, and as he comes out the final corner, a little bit wide of apex there, but using the torque of the car to come all the way around, he pulls over to the side and parks up by looks of things. That is the end of qualifying. Andrés Mesa takes pole, and Harry Phillips is P3, and Gaz Williams has found himself between the two of them, and Ulrik in the end has got himself into P4 as we now get ready to go racing, ladies and gentlemen. And this is going to be quite the start, I can tell you that, in the simple reason that we have had a bit of a surprise in the field, and that is that whilst Andrés Mesa has taken pole, it is not Harry Phillips who joins him on that front row, as we just see all of our drivers get themselves ready to go racing. But as we look on board right now with our P1 man of Andrés Mesa, it's the case that the Spaniard will be thinking, right, I've got the first job done, I've got that ticked off, that is to take pole position in emphatic fashion and by a good number of attempts as well, to state that I've got the pace. Now I've got to do it in the race. Now, of course, it'll be a double file manual rolling start, as will be dictated by Andrés Mesa. We go at the green as he will come out the final corner. They'll have the 1 lap in order to try and get the tyres and the brakes warmed up as much as possible and get a feel for the conditions. I can tell you already that the local temperature, whilst it was 14 degrees centigrade local ambient and it was 18 degrees on the track, the local temperature has dropped by degrees centigrade as we've gone into race conditions right now, and the rain is forecast for the next 30 minutes at least to stay at the same intensity as it has been so far. So we are going to have a relatively straightforward start to the race in terms of those conditions not evolving too much, but as time goes on, you can imagine those conditions could evolve, and if they do, that will cause an upset, and one driver who will be looking to capitalise on any potential upsets will be Gaz Williams right now, who's in a prime position to have a run. Andrés Mesa down into turn 1 here is the Briton in the Bentley, but behind him, you can imagine the one driver who will be thinking, right, I've got it all to do and I've got to nail that start. It is Harry Phillips, of course, who with that qualifying session, a very strong qualifying lap to be fair, only less than a tenth off of Gaz Williams, but Williams really has put on a brilliant performance. And then in P4, Martin Ulrik, he managed to get himself back onto that second row in the end. The M Technology driver, could we suspect that Ulrik is going to get himself between Phillips, Williams and Mesa come at the start of the race? And you imagine he will go for it. Ulrik would love an opportunity to get some major points and potentially take a podium. But as we look further down the order right now, it is the case that one driver who I think will be thinking he's got it all to do is our P9 man of Walter Lux, the 2G Racing Esport driver, the Austrian, who, having told us, of course, that he wanted to pick up a top 5 in the last 2 races, well, he's going to have to go someday. Starting P9, it's going to be one of those situations where I think for the opening couple of laps, he'll either try to go all in and gain as much as he possibly can, or just start off soft and then build up over the race distance. We will wait and see. Anything can happen over 120 minutes of racing. And Piringer, Ralf Piringer here, starting in P10. He'll know now that whilst he doesn't have to get an exceedingly good result in order to retain his P3 in the championship come that checkered flag, he will still need to finish somewhere in that top 10. And the further up he can finish, the better, of course, to make sure that he stays ahead of the likes of Ulrik and Lara come the end of tonight, and also Markus Fox. But we will wait and see as we continue to look down that order. And it will be his teammate Max Malliard who starts P14. And Malliard putting in a good qualifying performance there to start P14. It does look as though the BMW is really not happy with the conditions here. And the Oculus Fires powered by BMW team are going to have to really put in a lot of work over the race right now to turn around a dismal qualifying session, which I think was the best they could probably get out the cars, all things considered. And then looking further down, we do see our fellow BMW driver here of Jesse Monrose as well, starting P18. The Frenchman, the BSB Racing driver, will look to end on a high. Can he do so? That will be the big challenge. As meanwhile, we look on board the car of P21 man Victor Tolera here, the AF Course driver. A bit of a close-up camera there for the 488 driver as we now wait only a minute to go, just over a minute before we go racing. And as we look to the exterior cameras, we can see all the way at the back of the field, we do have Matt Emmons there as we look to the helicam. And on his debut, of course, he'll be racing as a guest tonight effectively, so he doesn't really have a major factor in terms of the championship stands. He'll be looking to just get himself through this one. I think that's why he's opted not to set a time in qualifying if he was permitted to do so, was so he could simply just come to grips, because this is new ground that he's treading, and it may be the case that we'll welcome him back in future seasons. But if we look from the back with Zafaratos lined up alongside Emmons, they'll be at the back of the field. And then we look a bit further up, our P5 man Paco Lara, having had that major moment in the end of the qualifying session and putting the car into the wall coming out the Schumacher S. Will Lara be able to find a way up through the field from P5 after what was a difficult start of Paul Ricard getting caught up behind the back of what was Walter Lux's McLaren that had started on the front row? Will Lara be able to have a much smoother start today and take the fight to our leaders? It's all to play for. 20 seconds to go before we get underway right now, and as we wait for our lead man to take us away, it's going to be anyone's guess how it's all going to end. Place your predictions in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know who you're cheering on. Let me know what you're expecting. And, well, we have now only got seconds to go before the Spaniard, Andrés Mesa, takes us away for the warm-up lap, for the rolling start lap. And as we look into the chat, we can see Brett Crewcamp there in the YouTube chat, and we say good evening to you, Brett, and we hope you're doing well. We see NXTGEN Ultra Sanders could get very and rather spicy with Gaz Williams in the mix with Mesa and Phillips, and Major Nesta in the Twitch chat there saying it's a good start in qualifying and hoping not to get involved in any instance. Well, as they've all pulled away, and I believe now, particularly in the case of what will be Majir, he will now be closing Twitch and focusing on the racing. It is a situation where as they all make their way around now on this parade, like you can see, Harry Phillips already making his way ahead of Gaz Williams in terms as they come off the line there. I think it's going to be the case that whilst he will yield the position, of course, otherwise he'll be subject to a stop and go penalty when we get underway racing for being out of position. I think what Harry Phillips is trying to do is just get into the mind of Gaz Williams and say to him that I'm coming for that P2 down into turn 1. You better be ready for it, because I'm going to take it off of you. As all our drivers make their way around through the Mercedes arena, we can see the field has opened up a little bit here, but it is one of those situations on cold tyres in particular, and during this warm-up lap, as we start to make our way down towards turn 6 right now, everybody will be tiptoeing around and just thinking about how they can gradually build up the temperature in both the brakes and the tyres here. Nobody will want to bin it on the parade lap, because if you do, it will be that situation whereby essentially you've got to try and charge your way back up through the order in order to get yourself back into your grid position. If you start out of position, of course, you are subject to a penalty, an automated penalty, a stop and go penalty, and that's the last thing that anybody wants. I think it's a drive-through as a minimum, but it can be a stop and go depending on the severity. But it will be the case that everyone will want to just maintain their position and gradually build up that temperature. As we look a bit further down and we see Ablas here starting P13, will he be able to make some sparks fly and head towards the top 10 finish? And it's the case that Andre Jacqueline in particular, he'll be starting P12 and he will be thinking about trying to get into the top 10 come the end of this, for the simple reason he'll want to hold on to that P10, that championship. He's worked very hard to get himself up into that top 10 and he will not want to lose it come the curtain falling. But as we continue to look down the field, Paul Scott here in P8, P19, a good qualifying session from Paul Scott from Optimum Motorsport, and he'll be looking to once again pull off a good result and finish in the top 20 tonight as he takes that McLaren through the Schumacher S. Almost said the Senna S is there. No, we're not in Brazil, as he makes his way through the Schumacher S and heads up towards turn 11. The rain really coming down at the moment, still that same intensity as we see all our drivers making their way up towards turn number 11 now. And as we look a bit further up towards the front, we see Fabio Kina here. And the Swiss driver, one of the most consistent drivers in terms of overall driving style. Hasn't been the fastest, but very consistent. Can the Swiss potentially get a top 5, which I think he would love to achieve? But he does have to worry about Ant Brown behind him, and Brown will know that this is a great opportunity to capitalise on the conditions and his potency in that McLaren in order to get into the top 5. As we see now, they all start to form up in the run-up towards Vidal here. We start to see the field concertina together. They bunch up, and it is the case that Andrés Mesa and Gaz Williams will take us away for the races. We're hearing that Zafratos has jumped to the pits. So Zafratos will be starting from the pit lane, and I think that is a bit of a shock and a disaster there. Franz Zafratos has decided to start out of the way of all the potential carnage and incidents that can happen in the Mercedes arena, but now we wait for Andrés Mesa to take us away for the final race of the season. And it's lights out and away we go for the finale. And as they all make their way off the line and charge down towards turn 1, we can see Gaz Williams having a very good start versus Andrés Mesa, using the traction of that Bentley to run down towards turn 1. But Mesa has the inside, as we see Ulrik trying a similar move versus Harry Phillips as they all concertina together down into turn 1. We can see Markus Fox also making multiple gains on this open lap, already up into P6 as they make their way up into turn 2. And as they come through the Mercedes arena, you can see Ant Brown trying to hold around the outside there, but he's falling back as we see that it's a case that Fabio Kina comes back up into P7 right now as they all come through into turn number 3. Now as they make their way through, no major incidents at the moment. We see Velkoski there making some gains, and Velkoski tapping the rear by the looks of things of what is a BMW there of Maliart, and the two of them going down the order as we see Piringer has made it through. But as they both now return, we look back to our live cameras up at the front of the field and we can see that Harry Phillips is down in P3, still not able to gain, with Gaz Williams not able to get himself ahead of Andrés Mesa, as meanwhile behind Paco Lara still in what is P6 right now, with Fox making 4 places at the start of the race, and Markus Fox with a phenomenal start, the best start of anyone as they all come rip-roaring down into turn number 8 for the first time of asking. Meanwhile, further behind, I can tell you that as all our time screens are updated right now, it is a situation whereby we do have Reina Effenstedt meanwhile in P17 having a difficult start to the race, and behind him that is Magia there, Nestor Magia, who is holding on to P18 for the time being, has fallen back a bit at the start of this race, but everybody has made it through minus 2 drivers. I think we've also had a drive forward a bit further down, that's Andrés Zafratos, who started from the pit lane, but it has been a very, very clean opening lap from the majority of our drivers right now, but some drivers making some huge gains with some bold moves, and Markus Fox being the one who's gained the most as we ride on board with Fox as he makes his way down towards Vidal on the opening lap. Now as he comes on down, you can see the amount of spray he's getting off of Ulrik's car ahead of him, and Ulrik having a good start as well. But as Fox charges all the way down right now, is a situation whereby I think he'll look to consolidate before he goes charging after the next place as he comes roaring through Vidal. So after one lap then, it is Andrés Mesa who is leading at the moment by 0.8 of a second and gaining versus Gaz Williams behind as they come across that timeline to complete the opening lap. Meanwhile, Gaz Williams in P2 being chased furiously by Harry Phillips, and then we've got Ulrik in P4, Fox in P5, followed by Paco, Lara in P6 and Brown in P7. Then we've got Piringer leading the rest of the field in P8 right now with Ulrik chasing after him. Piringer having a good start and gaining 2 places on the opening lap as they make their way down. Behind we've got Ulrik battling for P8 but having to defend against Christian Ablasser who's gained 3 places already, trying to make it a full, but he's dropped back instead. And now as he makes his way into turn 2, there's contact, and Ablasser there is sent for a spin on the inside of turn 2. Just a tiny bit of contact there with what was Fabio Kina's car as he tried to make the move, and I think the stewards will take a look at that one. I'm not sure how they're going to treat that, but we can see the move was on, and unfortunately it didn't work out. But that means Andre Jacqueline has now moved up into P11 as a result, as Sylvain Pastores has moved all the way up into P12, and Pastores has gained multiple places on the opening lap as well, and has done a phenomenal job. He's now chasing after Jacqueline as they make the way through turn number 6 and into 7. Now as they come roaring down into turn number 7 here, you see Jacqueline's gone very deep, and as a result Pastores looks at the potential move, and as they drag race their way down towards turn 8 right now, it's Pastores on the inside versus Jacqueline on the outside. He's not quite fully alongside yet, but he might go for it on the brakes. No, he tucks back in. He waits for another opportunity as we ride on board here with the Ferrari 488 driver as he makes his way out of the curve and now comes all the way out the hill, and you can see just struggling for the traction there compared to the Aston Martin ahead. And Jacqueline very strong on the exit there, but he goes a little bit wide into the Schumacher S, and I think Jacqueline right now might be just trying to make the breakaway here. I think he might be feeling a little bit of pressure from the Ferrari drivers. They make the way out towards turn number 11 as they come roaring into the braking zone. It's a situation right now where I think Pastores has also got to think about not making too many mistakes. He's made a great start as Pastores. He's gained the best part of 5 places on the opening 2 laps as he makes his way on through, and I'm hearing that we are having some changes further down the order as we look back to the exterior cameras right now. Jesse Monroe's in P13 with a good start there, as well as Magia's up into P15 and Evans State's up into P14. They come roaring up towards Vito once again here, and as they come on through, it is the case that right now nobody looking for any major moves. Everybody just being a little bit patient as we are seeing that Victor Tolera right now has got Velkoski over the back of him, and Velkoski of course having to now try and make as many places as possible up through the field as they all come roaring through. Vito once again, and it's the case that Tolera under major pressure as they come down, as they go into turn 16. You can see Velkoski looks to the move. He's made Tolera go deep. Tolera there having one eye and going a bit too late on his braking zone as they now come out the final corner, but you can see that Ferrari with its acceleration in 2nd, 3rd and 4th just able to beat back the Porsche as they come roaring across that timeline. And now look at this, Maliar looking for a move. They're going to try and make it 3 wide into turn 1. It's a situation where Maliar gets blocked there by Velkoski. Velkoski goes for a major dive there, completely misses his braking point. I think focused so much on Maliar and in the end misses his braking point, and as a result Maliar gains the place, and it's also a situation where Tolera is able to hold on for the time being as Maliar is now up into P20 and trying to make gains after Maliar was almost up into P10, as we are seeing. I believe it's the case that as they go side by side here, we have got Trippiano who's coming around the outside to inside here, but now Maliar's going to try and cut back out of 4 and 5 in the run down towards 6, and this is where the BMW is going to be very strong. It's got so much grunt on the straight, but you can see here Trippiano on the inside, and there's contact between the two of them. A little bit of a door up there, but they're able to keep it together for the time being. Keep it clean, lads. We've got an hour and 55 minutes of racing still to go. As you can see there, Velkoski's trying to come back as well, and this is battling for P20 mind you, but they all want as many points as possible, but right now they seem to settle back into an order. Do they, as Velkoski looks at the move? Maliar can't quite turn the steering wheel as much as he wants here, and Velkoski going for the move there, braver on the brakes as Maliar goes up onto the gravel, and as a result Velkoski gets the move done. As meanwhile looking back up front, you can see that Andrés Mesa is already making the break here. He's already got ahead of Gaz Williams by 1.1 seconds as they come up into Vito, and meanwhile Harry Phillips is falling backwards on the top 2 here, but remember we do have 2 pit stops, so it may be the case that Phillips is running a much heavier car. He could have more fuel in. He might be thinking about something bold. He might be trying to go for something inventive right now, as we can see our top 3 are starting to make the break from the rest of the field, but it is the case right now our top 2 are starting to saunter off into the distance, as meanwhile Ulrik there in P4 soldiers on all the same. And our top 2 are lapping in the 202s, and they're the only 2 drivers to do so. Everybody else 203s or higher in terms of lap times. As we can see that Ulrik right now has got Fox in his eyes, in his rearview mirror, as they make their way through turn 1 and head up towards turn 2 once again here into the Mercedes arena. But as they make their way on through, we can see Fox taking that aggressive line into 2 right now. And I do think that Fox is trying to close up to Ulrik here, but he's got a long way to go to close up as they make their way through turn 3. And I say that Ulrik goes very deep into 3. He manages to catch the car, but it is a case that right now Fox looking very composed now that he's settling into this race. We're only 7 minutes in, but it does look as though the Fox Sim Racing driver here is going to try and go for that P4, and I wonder whether he feels that he could potentially hunt down that podium. We will have to wait and see as he comes roaring through turn at number 7, but Paco and Lara behind will have something to say about that. Of course, Lara being the best part of 1.5 seconds off of Fox as they make their way down towards turn 8 once again, come charging down, but meanwhile looking further down the order, we can see that after what was a very mixed start for Fabio Kina, he's now in P9. He's in a comfortable P9, but he's not able to really gain too much, and Walter Lux ahead of him, who is lapping the best part of half a second faster by comparison. Andrés Jacquelin, in fact, is closing up to the back of Fabio Kina at a rather rapid rate. The two Aston Martin drivers now getting closer together, and we're expecting a battle very shortly, as meanwhile you can see further back Sylvain Pastores, and then we've got Jesse Monrose here, who's at the head of the next pack of cars, and we've got Ant Brown there, who has had a dire start and has dropped all the way down to P13. And Brown right now will be doing everything he can to try and come back up through the field, as we do check in with our stewards right now, and we're not hearing anything for the time being, but our stewards are furiously working at the moment. I can tell you that there have been some incidents already noted and recorded. Oh goodness me, as Monrose there goes wide out of the corner, and as he comes back onto the racing line out of 12, you can see he's lost one place. Now Worthing State have the bravery to go to the inside to go for another one, as we can see the McLaren driver goes a bit too wide there, looking to take that outside line, but taking it a bit too literally and running off the circuit and then some. As we can see, it's the case that Mejia now will now try to close up, as Ablasser is behind this pair as well, and it does look as though the battle for the midfield, and particularly just beyond P10, so looking for the battle really for P11 right now, is intensifying at a ferocious rate of knots as they come around to complete what is their 4th tour of the circuit, and as they make their way down towards turn 1 once again, you have to imagine that Mejia at this point will be smiling from ear to ear and thinking, okay, I've got an opportunity here, I could be looking at an outside shot of the top 10, as they make their way into the braking zone, and Ablasser looks for it. I think he's locked up there, indeed he has, and I think Ablasser, what he's done, the Austrian, is instead of carrying the car through, he's decided to stamp on the anchors and literally park the car on apex, and I think Mejia noticed that Ablasser had oversped into the corner, so both drivers showing one of a racing respect, and Ablasser doing everything he could, I should say, to avoid a racing incident, as Mejia had to go a little bit wide there to make sure the wayward advantage did not clip him, as they make the way now back under racing conditions through turns 4 and 5 and head up towards 6. But meanwhile back up front, I can tell you that right now Andrés Mesa is just flying. That last lap, a 202.2. Meanwhile, Gaz Williams, his pursuer, at 202.7. Harry Phillips at 202.9. Mesa is lapping half a second faster than anybody else right now as a minimum, and he is disappearing off into the distance. He does not want anybody to have their chance at grabbing this race, as meanwhile Ulrik is starting to struggle a little bit, it would seem. But I say that, then Fox has had a little bit of a moment coming out of the Schumacher S as they make their way through, and you can see Ulrik's gone a bit deep, as it looks as though Paco Lara is on the offensive right now as they make their way for 11 into 12. Re-ride on board with the McLaren driver here, who's coming alive right now, and I think it's the case that Fox had a brief moment coming out of turn 10, and by getting it wrong on the exit of 10, he's given the Spaniard the opportunity to close up massively as they make their way through 13. Now as they come roaring up towards Vidal here, you can see just how much spray is coming off the back of that Porsche. It's the case that Lara, I can only imagine how much he can actually see there. We can barely see it. Oh, goodness me. And Lara, they're just a bit too high on the apex curve at turn 15 and having the rear of the car unsettled. And that's the thing with the McLaren. As soon as that rear end becomes unsettled, you've got to put so much effort in and slow the car down to get it back under control. And it is the case that Paco Lara having a moment there, which could have spelled an absolute disaster, but able to get back together, as now he's got to do all that work again to chase after Markus Fox. But you can imagine that last lap, to be fair, from Lara, bar that one moment, that last lap was a 204.4. It would have been a high 203 if it weren't for that one moment. Markus Fox a 204.3. So right now Paco Lara is looking quite ferocious, you have to say. As meanwhile further back we can see Sylvain Pastores here battling with Ant Brown down into turn 1, and as they make the way out the hairpin corner, it is Ant Brown who's gained a place right now. The McLaren driver has found his way past the Rinaldi Racing driver in the Ferrari 488 and is now making his way further up the road. He'll be hunting down this man, Andrés Jacquelin, who in turn is hunting down Fabio Kina right now. But the Food Point Racing driver, I think, will be wary of the fact he does have a McLaren that seems to have the bit between its teeth and chasing after him as they make their way down towards turn 6. Now, as they continue their way on down, meanwhile, further down the field, we can see it's continuing. It is Jesse Monrose versus what is Reina Evenstedt here. Jesse Monrose having to be the defender, Evenstedt being the attacker here. And as they come through 7, we are seeing this continued theme where the BMW M6 just does not seem to like like the corners whatsoever in these tricky conditions, but it does enjoy being on the power, and that's the one thing it can do. As he says goodbye to Effenstedt in the run down towards turn 8. You can see how much time he opens up there. It's a tenth or two, and as they come through the corner here, this is where the difficulty really starts to be compounded as he comes out to turn 8 and makes his way up towards turn 9. And now as they get on that throttle again, the gap will start to open up, but as we come into the medium speed sweeper turn 9 and 10, as we come through the Schumacher, as you can see that Monroe's almost running wide there, just keeping the car together. And it's these little moments where he's having to push the car to the limit and makes those mistakes, which will be where Effenstedt looks to gain, where Rayner will look to go on the attack very soon as they come through into turn number 12 here. And as we look back to the exterior cameras, you can see that Monroe's is really struggling now for rotation through the corner. In fact, dipping the toe onto the inside apex curve there and beyond it. And as they come down through 13 and up towards 14 and 15, whilst I don't think the move's going to be on this time, you can imagine Effenstedt is going to be sizing up that move and looking for it potentially into the final corner, if not down into turn 1, as they come roaring through the chicane for what is for them the sixth time of asking. As they come into that final corner, this is when the McLaren driver will go a little bit deep here so he can get that late apex, he can get on the power sooner. And as they come through the corner, you can see now as they roll down, the BMW opens up that gap enough, and Effenstedt has to look to go once again as they come across that timing line. And I should tell you that Ablasso has moved up into P15. He has got ahead of Maggia here, but Maggia is not too far back as they make the way down towards turn 1 on the 7th lap. But meanwhile, back up front, it is that situation where Andrés Mesa is continuing to pull away right now. Although on that last lap, a little bit slower by comparison with Gaz Williams. It was a case that it swayed 5 tenths in Gaz Williams' favour, with Mesa a 2:03.495. Meanwhile, Gaz Williams a 2:02.910. And I do think it may be the case that Mesa's had a little bit of a moment there. Perhaps he just pushed the tyres a little bit too hard. But it is one of those situations where I think he'll very quickly identify what went wrong and bounce back from it in very short order as he makes his way on through to what is turn number 9 and 10 through the Schumacher chicane right now. And as he comes on through, we look a little bit further down our order and we can see Ralf Piringer here, who's up into P7. He has found himself back into that P7 position, but right now the German driver is just, I think, focusing on what he can do and keeping it together right now, just trying to bring home some solid points which will guarantee that P3. And right now, if things were to finish as they stand, he would be crowned P3 in our championship as he comes down into a turn number 11 here. And he is gradually, it should be pointed out, he's gradually matching at Paco Lara. That last lap, the two of them were identical, albeit it was the case that Piringer was able to gain a tenth of a second. And if this continues, you can imagine he may be getting a little bit closer as time progresses. But we'll have to wait and see. As meanwhile, Paco Lara, who we're looking just up the road in P6, is chasing down Markus Fox right now. But again, these two are exchanging lap times. Last lap, Lara was 3 tenths slower, but these two are exchanging those lap times. And I think it's the case that for Fox, he's going to have to manage those tyre pressures. That rather temperamental Porsche, it's very sensitive on its tyres. Once the tyres go, you do notice it. And as they make their way out the final corner onto lap number 8, we can see that the two of them practically match in terms of lap time, albeit Lara that time 4.5 tenths faster, and almost 5 tenths faster as they come down to the turn number 1 once again. And I think it's a situation right now where Lara may be starting to gain that upper hand, but we saw this last time when he got close enough. He made that one mistake through Vidal and he had to do it all over again. Will it be the same situation this time round? As we are hearing further up the field that Gaz Williams is closing up to the back of Andrés Mesa. That gap has come down to 1.4 seconds, and we will keep our eyes on that off camera. But as we see Paco Lara trying to close up right now, it is a very tricky situation because for the Mercedes arena, where it's all about those low speed corners and those low speed apexes and getting the torque and the torsion out of the corners, it's where Fox will excel in that Porsche. But as soon as we start to go to anything that's a medium speed apex or higher, that's when the McLaren seems to really come alive with its aerodynamics as they make the way down towards turn 8 once again. Meanwhile, further down, I can tell you that Ant Brown is continuing to charge after Andrew Jacklin and is closing up at roughly half to 1 second a lap as he makes his way through turn number 7. And looking a bit further down the order, we still do have our 24 starters racing. I can tell you that Gareth Mills has made his way up into P17 and we're starting to get some penalties in. So let's talk about those penalties that have come in, ladies and gentlemen. We can see as Gareth Mills is under pressure from Velkoski, and remember, Velkoski is effectively out of position with everything that happened to the German on the opening lap as they make their way down. Well, it's the case that Velkoski has been deemed to have perhaps caused something with that 15-second penalty as we're looking back right now and Mills feeling very safe. Velkoski has picked up a 15-second penalty for what was contact with car 404. So that was the car of Max Maliar, and we saw that in the helicam through turn 3 where the two drivers came together, and that was deemed to be an incident triggered by Velkoski, so he's got a 15-second time penalty. We've also got a drive-through for car 19. That is Trippiana, and that is for what was a dive bomb versus car number 4. And car number 4, to give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, of who that was, who was affected, that was Gareth Mills. We didn't see that on camera, but Trippiana's got a drive-through penalty for what was essentially a dive bomb into turn 1 on lap number 2. And then what was on lap 3, turn 4, we've got a warning to car 19 to Trippiana, and that was for aggressive driving. So 3 stewarding verdicts coming in so far. We're probably going to have some more come along as they make the way down through the corners. And as we can see here, Mills under major attack from what is Velkoski as they make the way into turn number 16 here. And Velkoski's going to try and go all the way around the outside here. This is very brave stuff from the German as they make the way out the corner. He couldn't quite get it done, but he's definitely shown his intent here. And whilst he's got that 15-second penalty, he's not letting it dissuade him from the fact that he wants to push on and go on the offensive as they make the way down towards turn 1. You can see Mills having to park the car in the middle of the road there. He's worried about Velkoski trying to send it up the inside. And meanwhile, behind, we can see Paul Scott is under attack from Max Maliar here. Maliar, of course, having to try and recover after that start where there's the contact between himself and Velkoski, which we talked about. Trippiana's into the pits, by the way, and I believe we have seen the retirement of Matt Emmons from this race. We have lost a driver. We are now down to 23 drivers as we see Paul Scott here making his way through turn number 3 and trying to hold off Maliar, who's chasing after him. But meanwhile, Mills, you have to say, is under some major pressure from Velkoski for P17 right now, and Velkoski will want to clear the South African for the simple reason that 15-second penalty and the pace he showed in qualifying. He'll think that he can get ahead as he looks to the outside here through turn 7. This is very brave because right now it's all about having that confidence to get on the power, and I think Velkoski is going to get this done as they make their way down towards turn 8. I think Mills has backed out of it as well, knowing that Velkoski is going to try and come through any which way in the end, and Velkoski up into P17 and making his intent clear. He wants to come up through the field as rapidly as possible. But meanwhile, looking from the rear of the field to the front of it, we can see that Andrés Mesa, after what was a couple of laps where the gap between himself and Gaz Williams seems to close up, it is the case that right now it is one of those situations where Andrés Mesa has now got back into the mid 202s, the 202.4 that time around. Gaz Williams a 202.5. Meanwhile, Harry Phillips, by comparison, a 203.6, and Phillips here is really being dropped by the leaders. And when I say drop, that gap has opened up between himself and Gaz Williams to 5 seconds, and to Andrés Mesa it's opened up to the best part of 6.5 seconds here. And I'm wondering whether our two leaders have got a lot less fuel in the car, or whether it's the case that Phillips is thinking about potentially going as long as he can in terms of his opening pit stop, because this is a very different type of body language that we're getting from Phillips right now. This isn't what we'd normally expect. We'd expect him to try and be there with the leaders, but he's deciding instead, I think, to try and go long or trying to play conservatively. As meanwhile, one driver who's under major pressure right now, you're right on board and looking back from him, is Martin Ulrik. He's got Fox and Lara chasing after him, and you can also see a plucky Piringer there catching up to him in the distance in P7. And it is the case that right now this is the battle for P4, and Fox has been there for some time, but I think it's the case that Lara will now be trying to come through. And can Ulrik potentially force Fox and Lara back together here? Because we saw how Lara was getting much closer to Fox in the early stages of the opening half an hour of this race. We are 20 minutes in, of course, and as they make their way down towards turn 8, you can see the advantage that the Mercedes of Ulrik has. As he comes out of turn 8, he's just got so much more acceleration to play with, and meanwhile it's the case that Fox has the ability to maintain apex speed, but in these long acceleration zones, particularly uphill through the Schumacher S, that is where Fox really loses out. As we see Ulrik there goes a bit deep, the car's unsettled and he gets it back under control here as he makes his way into turn 11, but the damage is done, and now it's the case that Fox is away with the back room. We've got a four-way fight on our hands here for what is P4 as they make the way through turn number 12. Ulrik is at the head of the pack and Piringer is at the rear of it as he makes his way down through turn 12 and chases after these guys. And as Fox makes his way in the slipstream versus Ulrik up towards Vidal, what can he do from here? I think the answer this time is nothing but stay menacing and look menacing as they make their way through. But you see Paco, Lara's gone deep on the brakes, as has Piringer there. Two drivers getting it very wrong, and as they both rejoin here, neither one gains on the other. Well, I say that. It is the case that Piringer has gained to a small degree here, but they've both lost out massively, and I think it may be the case of Piringer just simply looking at Lara and using Lara as his reference point in terms of where to brake. And with Lara going so deep and missing the braking point, I think Piringer then had to realise realised that he had to stamp on the brakes a little bit hard. He kept it together, but these two are getting close right now, as we can see that Lara under that pressure there for P6. Piringer looks the inside-outside line into 2 here, but Piringer is not going to wait anymore. He's going to look for this move, and he's going to try and get down the Mercedes arena. I think he wants to try and attack before Lara can get that McLaren back up to speed, because right now it does seem as though the Spaniard is struggling on those tyres as they make their way through 4. It's going to be one of those situations where Piringer will need to absolutely hammer the throttle pedal now down towards 6. If he can do that, he may win a chance down into turn 8, but this is getting very close right now, and you have to imagine whilst the BMW driver didn't have it in qualifying, he's definitely coming alive in the race, and he's reveling in the fact in these tricky conditions he can really start to push that M6 to its absolute limits as he comes down the hill. And as they make their way down towards the turn 8 hairpin, will he be able to look for a move? I don't think so this time, as we are hearing that Ulrik has opened up a little bit more of a gap versus Fox. But as they come through turn 8 right now, it is the case that Piringer has to wait and have to be patient now as they come roaring up the hill through turns 9 and 10. You can see there Ulrik and Fox going through your camera, and then it's Lara versus Piringer, and then we have got Walter Lux in P8 who is gradually catching up to these guys right now. So Lux will be looking potentially for an opportunity to attack for P7 or P6 in a brief while. He is only the best part of 2.5 seconds back as they make their way through turn 11. There he is, the TG Racing Esport driver, as they make their way through 12. And you have to say that right now, as we ride on board with Piringer here, it is looking quite promising for the BMW driver to make a move. But will Lara make the same mistake twice as they come all the way through here? They go for the right-hander of 13. You can see the spray coming up onto the windshield, and how he can see it's beyond me as they make their way into the braking zone for Vidal. And you can see Lara is not feeling comfortable at this chicane this time around, having to go very heavy on the brakes and a little bit sideways on exit as well, but he's been able to keep it together this time. But as they make their way through 16 here, they complete the full set of corners and come out of the corner onto the start finish straight. Here's the case as they go on to lap number 12 here. Piringer is looking very menacing and is trying everything he can. I think he will look for a potential move into 1. Is he going to go for it here? It's going to be very late on the brakes if he goes it. Not this time, but he was considering. He's getting close enough here as we look to the helicam, and this is amazing stuff from both drivers as they make their way through turn number 2. But as they go through the Mercedes arena here, we look a little bit further back and we can see it's a situation whereby Andrew Jacklin has now got Ant Brown all over the back of him. And he will know he's not. My apologies there, getting two drivers mixed up. He's all over the back of Fabio Kino, I should say. He has closed up to the Aston Martin racing rival as they make their way through 3 and up into 4. And as they come through the sequence of corners here, through 4, 5 and up towards 6, you have to imagine that it may kick off very shortly with regards to a potential move. 7 tenths is the gap right now, but Jacklin is continuing to reel in that gap. A couple of attempts to lap as we see Kino goes a bit deep there in through 6 and into 7. That will compromise his rotation line through 7 in terms of he won't be able to take as wide an entry into the apex, and that's going to cost him a further tenth as they make their way down the hill. Meanwhile, further back in P13, we can see that while Sylvain Pastorius has broken away from the battle for P13, it's Jesse Monrose who is still holding on here, and he's got Christian Ablas, Reina Effenstein and Nesta Magia all over the back of him as they make their way down the hill towards turn at number 8 for what is the 12th time of asking. As they come roaring down here, you can see Monrose has got so much power to play with in the run down these straights, but as he makes his way into the corner here, having a lot of power is one thing, being able to turn it through a corner is another, and that's where he's struggling by comparison with Ablas, who's able to stay so close behind him through the Schumacher S's here. But as they come roaring up the hill and make their way towards 11, will Ablas be close enough? I don't think so this time. I think he's going to have to wait once again as they make their way up towards the braking zone, but you can see Monrose really having to put the car in the middle of the road. He does not feel safe just waiting on the racing line, and as we ride on board here with Ablas in the battle for P13, it's the body language of the two cars here. Now, I think we can also feel a little bit of frustration coming from the TUG driver in terms of he's got a lot of pace to unleash, but he needs to find a way past the Colossus that is that M6. Now, where can he do it? I suspect he'll try to do it through the Mercedes arena, but he's got a long way to go to find his way on through as they make their way into turns 14 and 15 here. And again, you can see as they make their way out the chicane that both drivers are able to take it relatively calmly, albeit I'm sure it's very furious in the hands of the drivers in their cockpits right now as they make their way out of the final corner. And we can see that Monroe's getting the better exit this time, and Ablas having to build up that charge once again as they go on to lap number 13. But meanwhile, going from them down to a P19 right now, where Velkoski chasing after Paul Scott here. This will be the battle for P18 that's building up to a crescendo. And as they come on through the right-hander at turn number 16 here, I think we've... Oh, goodness me. And Scott has had a moment gone onto that gravel, and he recovers the car. So Velkoski gains the position there without any major issues as we see him make his way on through. We have had the retirement of Eduardo Tripiano as well, so we are now down to 22 drivers. Our last driver is Max Maliar, who's just had a major moment at the Vidal chicane there. So he's the last of our runners right now. Maliar having a disaster race and into the pits, as meanwhile our race leader is heading up towards Vidal right now as he comes out of turn number 12. Here's Andrés Mesa. He's 2 seconds clear of Gaz Williams, and it is the case that Harry Phillips is continuing to fall backwards, albeit he's just set another 202.9, but Andrés Mesa in the 202.5s, as is Gaz Williams. And I do wonder here whether Gaz Williams is potentially just protecting his pace right now and deciding to run the pace of Andrés Mesa where he can, because he is making that Bentley fly through this circuit, and the two of them are near identical on lap time. Every start it will be the case that Mesa pulls a bit more of a gap over Gaz Williams, but you have to say that right now their last laps were 202.5s, and as they come to the end of this current lap, well, we just had a new fastest lap set by Andrés Mesa, which is a 202.1, practically heading into qualifying times right now. And meanwhile, Gaz Williams at 202.3. So again, it was only 1.5 tenths pulled out by Andrés Mesa on that lap, but Gaz Williams is definitely showing that he's got a lot of steel and metal to play with as they come on through turn number 2. And meanwhile, whilst we look further down, we can see that Ulrik has broken away from Fox once again. The gap between the two of them now has opened up to the best part of what is, as our time screen's updated, 2.5 seconds. But then it's the battle for P6 where the concerns are there, and we can see that Piringer's once again trying to feint a move to the inside. He's trying to get Lara to go late on the brakes and go too deep, but it's the case that Lara's having none of it as they make their way through turn number 2 here. And as they come through the left-hander, you have to imagine that Piringer will need to find something special here. Could he potentially go for an undercut? That would be the question. I think if he's going to go for an undercut here, it wouldn't be wise to do it right now, simply because whilst we have almost cleared half an hour of racing, our field is pretty still tightly bunched together, and it may be the case that he comes out into severe traffic as they make their way around on circuit here. And meanwhile, looking further back, we've got Walter Lux, who has fallen a little bit back off of Piringer, you have to say. He was 2 seconds there, and now it's a case of 2.8 seconds. I do think that Lux right now is just focusing on managing his pace. He's not quite on the pace of Lara and Piringer. He's been matching them every so often, but he's not quite there yet as he makes his way down towards turn number 8. Now, whilst this has all been going on, we can see a good number of you in the chat as well, talking about the racing, enjoying the racing as well. We will come over to your remarks in the chat very shortly, but meanwhile, as we look around the field, we can say Fabio Kina here, who has got the building pressure of Andrew Jacklin, as we look backwards here from the leader of the two Aston Martin Racing Vantage V8 machines. But you have to say that Jacklin is starting to put that pressure on, and as they do come through the chicane here, the high-speed chicane that's the Schumacher S, you can imagine that Jacklin right now will be just trying to gradually squeeze the pressure onto Fabio Kina. The one thing about racing at this circuit is it's quite a difficult circuit to overtake it in the dry, for the simple reason you've got to have a significant overspeed and the confidence on the brakes. Add to that the fact we're racing in wet conditions, and you can imagine it only gets harder, and that's what Jacklin will be thinking about. Can I make Kina make a mistake rather than have to force the move on him in track and have to worry about ceding time to the guys ahead and also to Ant Brown behind? Well, we'll have to wait and see, of course, as they make their way through Vidal once again here. Can we see any differences? We can see a little bit of additional body roll there on the back of Jacklin's car that's giving him the ability to come on through, as we see Kina there goes deep into 16, but Jacklin's a bit too tight and can't get on the power as early as would like. Both drivers, they're driving on the limit as they come down towards turn 1 once again, but you can see Kina here able to keep that gap. He's able to manage it, as I think Jacklin may be struggling with some tyre temps on the right hand side tyres, and we saw him briefly come off the racing line to get some additional water coverage on the right hand side tyres. From his perspective as the driver, we'll wait and see, of course, whether tyre temperatures are proven to be an issue, as Max Maliar is into the pits, we're hearing from P22, and Ant Brown is into the pits. Now this is interesting. We would not have expected Ant Brown to have come in as early as he has, but he's decided enough's enough on this opening stint. He's going for only half an hour on his opening stint as he pulls into the pit. And as we look back up the front right now, we can see that Markus Fox here in P5, well, he's matching Ulrik's pace, but the gap between himself and Ulrik has opened up. Paco Lara has fallen back as well, and Piringer has had a nightmare lap. That previous lap, a 204.3 from Piringer versus Paco Lara's 203.2. And as a result, I do think now that it's a case that our top 7 have all spaced out quite considerably, and as a result of that, now they're all going to be trying to manage their races and thinking about the pit stop phase. And as we've cleared the first half an hour, I think it's only apt that we start to take a look at some of your comments in the chat, as we look to Jesse Monrose here, who's still holding off Rain at Effenstedt. These two have been nose to tail for the best part of 5 to 6 laps right now, and you have to say it's a brilliant dynamic. We've got two very different cars. The one we're looking at built around power and performance on the straights and stability as well on the corners, and meanwhile the car behind Effenstedt and the McLaren, it's all about the handling and the aerodynamics as they make their way out of turn 8. You can see how close he's getting, but he's just not able to find the move, and he really needs to get done under braking and cost Monrose the ability to get on the power on the exit of a corner. as they make the way up towards turn number 11. And as they come roaring up there, we're going to take a brief breather and take a look at what you guys and girls have had to say so far. So we can see there in the Twitch chat, John Quixoctane 92 saying, let's go Paco, speaking about Paco Lara and saying that Paco is a rain god. And what's happened to Prendergast? I'm not 100% sure. I do believe it's the case that perhaps Prendergast has decided that he could only take part in the opening 6 rounds and has not been able to make the last 2. But I haven't heard anything. It is a shame we're not seeing Prendergast here, because we were hoping to see him potentially return tonight. But we wish him well all the same. And we can also see that we have Sebastian Mühlbacher there in the YouTube chat saying go TUG Racing, so supporting the likes of Rainer Effenstedt and Walter Lux as well, and also Christian Ablas, who's a bit further back compared to these guys. And we have also got there in the Twitch chat Vade Bummer, who's saying that Lara is one of the best performances. Indeed, it's the case that Paco Lara, who we're seeing in P6 right now, starting to build that pressure once again versus Markus Fox, and I think just trying to find a way past the Porsche. If he's able to do so, he will find a way to do so, that you can be sure of. And as we continue to look down, we can see Rocky Rocco there in the Facebook chat saying, hey boys, looking good, you too good sir, and I'm glad you're enjoying it so far. And we've also got Matthias Fightinger, who is saying TG are racing for the win. And we've also got Greg B in the YouTube chat alongside Matthias, who is saying that raining cats and dogs. Indeed, the rain is quite ferocious here, as is the racing. And I do apologise if I've butchered anybody's name there in the chat. I must admit that's one of my weaknesses, but I'm sure it will become one of many things I'm known for over time in terms of name butchering, if I'm not already known for it already. But as we look back to the live racing right now, it is the case that Paco Lara doing everything he can in order to close up to Fox, and he has closed up quite considerably on this lap. He's closed up by the best part of 3/10 of a second as they make their way roaring on down towards turn number 13, up towards Vidal here. And I can tell you that the fastest lap has just been improved to a 2:02.001, and Mesa going for the perfectionist lap of a 2:02 flat. And it is the case that right now Gaz Williams not able to respond, and in fact a 2:02.5 for our P2 man. So our race leader is really doing everything he can to open up that lead. But meanwhile, this battle for P5, you have to imagine with Piringer falling backwards and Ulrik further up the road, that Fox is going to look vulnerable in the next couple of laps, as Lara's taken the best part of 4.5 tenths out of Fox in the run down towards turn 1 over the course of the 16th tour of the circuit. But as they make their way through turn 1 right now, can Fox find a way to hold on? As meanwhile, a little bit further back, you can see Walter Lux here, the lead TUG Racing eSport driver, chasing after Piringer right now and closing up quite gradually. Piringer, in fact, having a disastrous lap that last time around at 2:05.0 for Piringer. Meanwhile, for our hero here, we're looking at a 2:03.8, gaining by 1.2 seconds, I should say. And can the McLaren driver here finally get a bit closer to the P7 man? We will have to wait and see. As meanwhile, looking a bit further back, from one TUG Racing eSport driver to another, we can see him in the rear of your picture. There is the case that Monrose is still holding off Effenstedt as they make their way out of 1 and up into 2. And you can see that Effenstedt was a bit too close and actually had to back off the throttle there and throw the steering to the right hand side to avoid tapping the back of Monrose. Monrose is really started to struggle now, it would seem, in terms of through these handling low speed corners, whereas Effenstedt is just bringing the car alive right now, and this could really change the dynamic, as we have had some pit stops as well occur. We've still got more to go, and we'll see them on the tracker in terms of pit stops being completed. And the first of our drivers in terms of completing pit stops, well, we've got Max Maliar, who's still parked up in the pits, I believe. I think we might have lost another driver. I'm not sure who we've lost, but we have lost somebody else. But as they make their way down towards turn 8 right now, you have to imagine that Monrose has felt that pressure from Effenstedt for a good number of laps, and he won't be worrying about it. As we see, Victor Tolera has got a penalty, and we'll find out what's happened. It's a 10-second penalty for Victor Tolera, and that's the AF Corsa Racing driver there in the Ferrari 488, and that is for the following. That is a 10-second penalty to car number 52 for what happened on lap 14, turn number 7, with car number 4 making contact in turn 7 with car number 4. And car number 4 was Gareth Mills, who finds himself all the way down in P20. I think there may have been an incident between the two of them, and Gareth Mills was on the receiving end of damage to his race, and now Tolera has to pay the price, of course, according to our stewards. But that's the latest things are coming from our stewards. Our stewards continuing to watch this race very feverishly, of course, for any unfair play or anything that's deemed as unsporting, as we see that Mills is in P20. Max Malliart currently parked up in the pits. I'm not sure if this is a retirement or just boxing at the car and looking to take it again soon. We'll wait and see. But meanwhile, Nestor Magia here down in P15 right now and has fallen away to a degree off of Christian Ablas after being passed by the fellow Aston Martin driver as he goes a little bit too high there on the apex of 14. He's got to be worried about riding high on that central apex. And the thing about the Vidal chicane in particular, you'll see there are those raised curbs. If our drivers hit those raised curbs too hard and too frequently, they could be prone to picking up some small punctures, which will see the tyre pressure in their tyres drop considerably, particularly at turn 15. If they hit that apex hard at turn 15, then they may cause a puncture on the front right tyre. But right now, looking away from punctures to puncturing a hole into the lead of this race and continuing to do so, Andrés Mesa, you have to say, is really off into the distance. 4.7 seconds is the gap now between himself and Gaz Williams, and he is keeping that gap on the fly as they make their way up towards Vidal right now. And we look back to our P2 man, who is just not able to keep up. He's still in the 202s, to be fair. Our top two have been lapping in the 202s consistently, whereas our P3 man of Harry Phillips is really the next fastest on circuit, you have to say, and he's been lapping continuously in the low to mid 203s with the occasional high 202. I think the Wild Things Racing driver is definitely going for something different here in terms of the strategy, in the fact that all of our drivers have to make those 2 pit stops, but what is he planning? That is the big question, and we'll have to wait and see if he has got a plan to try and come back at Andrés Mesa right now. Perhaps it is the case that the Spaniard and Gaz Williams, the Briton ahead of him, have just got the upper hand, as we see that Gareth Mills is into the pits there. We just saw him beyond the catch fence, and as he makes his way down towards one, you have to imagine that Phillips right now will be digging upon every reserve he's got in order to find a way to turn this race around, as further back it is the case that Martin Ulrik in a peaceful P4 right now, and I think just gradually making his way around on the circuit, thinking to himself, you know what, I like being in P4, this is nice, I haven't got any pressure. But meanwhile, talk about pressure, Paco Lara has made his way through on the exit out of turn 16 in the drag race down towards one. We didn't quite catch it, but he's found a way through versus Markus Fox, and as they make their way through one and up into 2 here in the battle for P5, will we see Paco Lara make the breakaway, or will Markus Fox be able to come back at him? Well, I think it could be the case that with Fox having a disastrous lap that last time round, a 205.3 versus Lara on a 204.3, I think it was the case that Fox made an error coming out the final corner, didn't have the power, and Lara was able to come on through rather peacefully. But Lara right now, you have to say, is up into P5 and is reveling in these conditions. Could he hunt down Ulrik? He has got a gap of 4 seconds to close down, and based on his pace he's already showing, he is closing that gap down a little bit already. We will wait and see, but I think the Spaniard here could be on course to take the fight to the Mercedes driver ahead as they make their way down towards turn number 8. And an observation made by Greg B in the YouTube chat there, saying about the fact that look at the spread of manufacturers across the top 8, and indeed look at that spread, ladies and gents. We have got 2 Bentleys, an Aston Martin, a Mercedes, a McLaren, a Porsche, a BMW, and then another McLaren. It's fantastic to see all the different types of car here battling one another ferociously, and all in with a chance of great points and great finishes come the end of the season. But right now you have to think that for what is Paco Lara, if he can't break away from what is Fox, Fox will be looking to come back. As meanwhile, I can tell you that in terms of something that's happened quite recently, Andrew Jacqueline has actually fallen behind Svain Pastoris. We haven't seen what's happened on circuit, but I think Jacqueline may have made a mistake somewhere, because right now for Pastoris to have closed up that much, and for Jacqueline to be the best part of 15 seconds down Fabio Kina, who he was very close to only moments ago, that is not what we would expect from the Food Point Racing driver. He is chasing after Pastoris right now with a vengeance and going back after that position as he makes his way up into turn 12, and Pastoris is just trying to hold head. Jesse Monrose, well, he's still got Effenstedt behind him, and Moreno is all over the back of him here as they come through turn 11 and up into 12. This is the battle for P12. And it has been going on for the best part of 10 laps right now. That is, in terms of time, that's 20 or so minutes at least. And you have to imagine, for Effenstedt, what can he do to find a way past that M6? He is doing everything he can. He just does not seem to have enough coming out of certain corners on the run up to the next corner to be able to get alongside or go for a lunge on the brakes. And as they come through 15 and head up towards 16, you can see that Monrose comes into the pits. And Effenstedt right now will be grateful for that. But I do wonder how much damage has been done to Effenstedt's possibilities of getting into the of getting into the top 10 come the end of the 2 hours right now, because he has been stuck there behind Monrose for a very long time, and that cannot have worked to his advantage. As meanwhile we can see here in the battle for P5 that Fox is starting to fall back with some Lara very slightly, but it is the case that Paco Lara hadn't got past Fox, is not pulling away as much as we would have expected here, and I think that Fox may have found that now that he is the chaser rather than the one being chased, that he's actually enjoying this position a little bit more, and perhaps even gaining with the toe along the straights. Of course, getting that distant toe off of the back of the McLaren ahead of him, which is punching a nice hole in the air as they make their way up towards what is turn number 11 I should say, as they come through 9 and 10 through the Schumacher S. But right now it's anybody's guess as to whether Fox can come back at Lara, although Lara has started to make the break as they come up towards 10, and we can see Ulrik is the best part of 5 seconds up the road right now, and he's really just going off into the distance. That last lap, Paco Lara at 203.8, Martin Ulrik at 203.2, that was 6 tenths pulled out by the Mercedes driver up the road, and he is making it count. But meanwhile, going from the battle for the midpoint of the top 10 to the battle for the last place in the top 10, we can see Savarin Pastores here, who has now got Andre Jacqueline chasing after, and Jacqueline will do everything he can to get back into the top 10 as soon as possible and go hunting down Fabio Kina, I'm sure, as we see Pastores go a little bit deep. And as we ride on board here with Andre Jacqueline as he chases after the Ferrari ahead, and you can see the confidence that Jacqueline does have. And I do wonder what happened to Jacqueline to see him drop down here. Perhaps it was a mistake, perhaps he got a bit too close to the back of Fabio Kina, had to run off circuit. We'll find out later on, of course, but right now focusing on the here and now, you can see how Jacqueline does seem to have an advantage in terms of lap pace and consistency as they make their way through Vidal here, and Pastores really struggling there for the corner as they come into turn 16. You can see Pastores goes a little bit deep there, and as a result now Jacqueline's going to be in a prime position, but do not count out the Ferrari's acceleration as they come out the final corner and make their way down towards turn 1. But Jacqueline's right there right now. He'll use the V8 beast at his disposal. He'll look for the move as they're building up towards turn 1. He looks to the inside here as we do see it's a case we've got cars coming out the pits, under braking into turn 1, Jacqueline on the inside, and as they make their way through the apex here, we can see that Pastores tries to hold to the outside, but he hasn't got the time of day to do it, and as a result it is Jacqueline who's now up into P10 unless Pastores can find a way back on through in turn 3, but he's not able to. And as a result has to settle in behind and wait for another opportunity. As meanwhile we can see further back there we've got Victor Tolero who's just come out the pits and is in a battle with Jesse Monrose, who's just come out behind him, and Monrose will not be happy with the fact that he's come out behind Tolero. He will have wanted clear air as they make their way up towards turn number 6, and as they come roaring up towards turn 6 and into 7, right now you have to imagine that Monrose is having a race that is starting to fall away from his hands as Tolero has gained that position after coming out the pits. But meanwhile, looking back up front, we can see Andrés Mesa continue to open up that gap right now with another thunderclap of a lap, another 202 at 202.8. Meanwhile, Gaz Williams, by comparison, he crossed that timeline at 202.6. So a little bit of a gain for Gaz Williams that time around, but Andrés Mesa really keeping in those 202s as much as he possibly can, keeping in the mid 202s as a minimum where he possibly can. And meanwhile, in that battle for P5, having finally made the break away from Markus Fox, Paco Lara is now chasing after Ulrik, and he is starting to match Ulrik. In fact, their last laps were identical 203.141s, and now what we see as they come across the timeline this time, Ulrik at 203.7, meanwhile Paco Lara a 203.5, 2 tenths gained, and it is the case the McLaren driver is soldiering on and trying to find a way, as I am hearing in my ear that they have had to retire the second of the 2 Jochen Schweizer powered by BMW machines. So Max Maliar is out of this race, and I believe we have also lost Gareth Mills. So we are starting to see attrition kick in. We now only have 19 drivers remaining out on circuit out of our starting 24, which is unfortunate. We are just checking in with race control. We're not hearing anything else at this moment, but it is the case that things have not worked out for some drivers in these very difficult conditions. As meanwhile we look a little bit further down, and with Jacqueline having cleared Pastores, you can see the gap has opened up. He is now chasing after Fabio Kina here, and Kina lapping about the same by comparison with Jacqueline in terms of lap time, and I think Jacqueline's now got a long road ahead of him to close up to the man in P9. As he makes his way through turn 2 and up into turn 3, with 45 minutes of this race complete by the time he exits the Mercedes arena and heads down to turn 6, you can imagine that it's going to be one of those situations where Jacqueline will be digging deep right now and thinking about managing the race. He won't be trying to go all in at this point, knowing that it's going to be a major challenge if he does. Meanwhile, speaking of someone who's got to go all in, we can see the BSP Racing driver of Jesse Monrose here, the Frenchman. He will be looking to go all in versus Lara here to get past the Ferrari driver and then start to make some ground after his pit stop, because right now being stuck behind Lara after they've both completed their first of their mandatory stops, you can imagine he's looking for the move here. He wants to get it done. Will he have the brakes to be able to do it into turn 8? He's going to go for it. Lara, however, cuts across the front as it's right to do so, as Monrose was not fully alongside, but Lara's gone deep. Now it's a battle on the acceleration out of turn 8. But you can see Lara holding that outside line, had more room to play with, and as they come through the Schumacher S here, Monrose gets it wrong on the entry and runs up onto the gravel there. The car understeering into turn 9, and as a result Monrose now has lost out considerably to Lara, and this race is going from good to bad to disastrous for Monrose right now. He does have a lot of time still to bring it back, to be fair, but he's now made the work even harder for himself, as the driver he was battling with, Effenstedt, is now coming up to lap him. But remember, Effenstedt is yet to take a pit stop, and that's why the two of them are now where they are out on circuit. But meanwhile, as we see, it's the case that Monrose is having a bad day at the office, it would seem. We can see that Ant Brown versus Paul Scott here. Brown has already pitted. Scott has yet to pit, and as they make their way through turn number 8 here, I think Scott there deciding to go a little bit deep as well, and you could see that actually Brown flashing his lights to say thank you, putting his hazard lights on briefly. So I think Scott then, knowing that he's not in the race versus Ant Brown, it's not worth battling with the fellow McLaren driver, and instead the Optimum Motorsport driver is now focusing on using the Code Brown driver as a bit of a pace car for a couple of laps, just to give him an idea where he may gain a little bit more time as they make their way through turns 11 and 12. And Paul Scott, of course, in the race against Nestor Magia as they make their way through, but Magia himself has already made his first of 2 pit stops. So I think right now Paul Scott is just focusing on keeping it clean and keeping those laps together as he comes roaring through 13 and up towards 14 and 15. As he makes his way up there, we can see Magia here a little bit further back as he comes on through, and as he makes his way through turn number 12 and heads down towards 13. It is the case right now. Scott is the best part of 20 seconds up the road from him, and it was Andrés Mesa who's closing up to the back of Scott. So we have got our leaders coming through to start lapping a good portion of the field, and as they make their way all the way up towards turn 14, we are hearing from Gareth Mills in the YouTube chat to say that he's had did not finish a DNF of retirement due to problems with his internet connection. He's lost connection, and as we can see Magia there making sure not to break the connection in terms of leaders versus lap cars. It is the case Gareth Mills has said he's enjoyed the season, he's had an awesome season and looking forward to the next one. We're glad to hear you're doing okay, Gareth, and we look forward to seeing you come back in future seasons. Glad you enjoyed it. But as we continue to look in the chat there, we can also see Greg B saying that car number 4 has the best livery. Well, we're not giving prizes for liveries here, but indeed that is Gareth Mills' car, which we won't be seeing any more out on circuit today. And we can also see Paco there being supported by Don Quixote 92 of the Battlethorpe P5, of course, as we see Paco Lara is into the pits from what was P5, and he's decided to call this pit stop early, and Gaz Williams as well. Gaz Williams is into the pit, so this is where it starts to open up. Now the reason why this is intriguing is because in a 2-hour race, you can imagine 120 minutes. If you cut it into 3 chunks, that's 40-minute chunks. We have gone beyond the opening 40 minutes, and we're only really now starting to see pit stops from our leaders. And this is where we have a big question on our hands. What are our leaders thinking? Well, right now, Andrés Mesa is probably thinking, Scott, if you could politely move out the way in the run-up towards turn 11, I'd be grateful. A bit of a difficult spot there for Scott to be caught up to, as we can see that our leader has made his way on through, and in fact has just respected the fact that Scott couldn't get out the way, and Scott moved out the way at his earliest opportunity. But right now, I do think that Andrés Mesa is going to try and do a long opening stint and then do 2 short stints to give himself coverage for the end of the race, because you'd normally split this race around 40-minute intervals. And we've seen that Gaz Williams, who's come out in what is, I believe, he's come behind Jacqueline, he's come out in P9. Gaz Williams has brought himself out behind a car, so this is not ideal. What about Paco Lara? Well, Paco Lara has come out in what is P12. He's ahead of Christian Ablas, and he's got a good amount of time between himself and the next driver up the road, who he has to pass for track position, I should say, and that is Rainer Effenstedt. Effenstedt is the best part of 9 seconds up the road. And for Paco Lara, who I think has just taken on fuel, much like what has been done by Gaz Williams, I think both drivers here sought to get clear air. Paco Lara has found that clear air. Gaz Williams has not found that clear air and will now have to find his way past the Food Point Racing driver, who you can see here has already got a face full of Williams catching up to him, and then some as they make their way through 10 and up towards 11. And I think Jacqueline at this point will be starting to think to himself, okay, do I fight or do I simply let him through here? I think Jacqueline will be thinking more about letting Williams through and letting Williams pull him up towards Fabio Kino, who's the best part of 13 seconds up the road. but we'll have to wait and see as they make the way out of 12 and down towards 13 and up towards Vidal at 14. But right now it's a difficult situation for Williams because he would have been hoping he would have had clear track, but he's not afforded himself that, and this could give Lara the opportunity to close up over time, and we will see whether there's any reaction from the drivers up ahead right now. Of course, they will be monitoring this situation quite well, as we see Jacqueline stays out for the time being and continues to put in the laps. To be fair, Jacqueline staying in those high 203s to low 204s. It's not as though he's a slouch in terms of pace, but Gaz Williams right now will be doing everything he can to build up that pace and go on the offensive as soon as possible as they come across that timing line once again. But meanwhile, further down, we can hit. Well, I can tell you that right now it is the case that Ant Brown in P15, having made that one pit stop and having cleared Paul Scott, is now trying to make his way out to Robert Velkoski, who has a 15-second time penalty to serve in the pits before the mechanics can work on the car. But Brown is continuing to push on here with a difficult day at the office. But as we look from Brown back to Williams, you have to say he has closed up to the back of Jacqueline quite rapidly. And as we ride on board here with the Bentley driver from Britain, you can see coming out of turns 4 and 5, he is inching closer, getting that power down as much as possible, using the low RPM band turbo input of that Bentley to his advantage as he makes his way into turn number 7. You can see Jacqueline there getting it very wrong and almost going up onto the apex there of turn 7. The right hand wheel's just simply running onto the grass and having to straight wheel the car. As a result, they make their way down towards turn 8, and I think that Williams is trying to get the signal through to Jacqueline. Look, if you can't hold the pace, then don't race it, because as they make their way through turn number 8, you can see now that Jacqueline's really starting to feel some pressure as they come out of 8 and up the hill towards 11 they run. Now, will it be the case here that Williams is able to find his way through naturally onto turn 11, or will we see that Jacqueline holds position a little bit longer? But you have to think that Williams right now, if he can't find a way through easily, he's going to force this one, because he needs to be able to get on through right now. He will be costing himself time as he's stuck behind, as Jacqueline runs wide and moves out the way immediately there. He doesn't fight it on the return to the circuit, as we see Jacqueline loses the position after going deep out of 11, and Gaz Williams is now up into P8. Jacqueline's there behind him. Will we see a return here from Jacqueline up into Vidal? Surely not. This would not work to their advantage. You can see Jacqueline's all over the back of him. He's going to look for it to the outside here as they make their way in, and as they come through the chicane. Jacqueline did try to come back from the move there, brave stuff, but not able to find it and goes into the pits instead. So Jacqueline has decided enough is enough. He's done 52 minutes of the race on that opening stint, and this is the time to come on in, as we see Victor Tolera has gone to the pits and has retired the car. So we have lost another driver from this race. We have lost Victor Tolera. We are now down to 18 drivers as the rate of attrition continues here from our starting 24. We have lost 6 drivers so far, and as they continue to make their way round right now, we can see that it is a case of Andrés Mesa. He's leading still. He's yet to make his opening pit stop as he comes down towards what is turn number 8 in a short while. Well, no, sorry, not down to turn 8. He's heading up towards Vidal, I should say. Camera angles look very similar from turn 7 and turn 12, but as he makes his way out towards Vidal here, here's the case. Andrés Mesa does seem to be in control of this race, and nothing seems to faze him. But again, could it be the case that Harry Phillips, our P2 man right now, has done something different in the strategy to give himself the best possible opportunity coming into the second half of the race? We'll have to wait and see. I can tell you that Harry Phillips' pace is holding in the low 203s typically, and is improving towards the minimal 203. So that last lap was the 203.1 from Harry Phillips. I'm wondering if he's heavily fueled the car for the start of the race and decided, compared to everybody else, to put the maximum possible fuel in and save himself some time in the pits and see what happens later on. We'll have to wait and find out, of course, but it's going to be a very interesting dynamic. A 203.0 that time from Phillips. I think he's decided to go for the bold strategy of putting all the fuel in early, whereas Mesa's probably gone for a low amount of fuel early on. But meanwhile, Ulrik in P3, you have to imagine right now that the Mercedes driver, he'll just keep putting the laps in as best he can. A 204.3 that last time around versus Gaz Williams on a 204.7 the last lap he did. But Ulrik is continuing to shine here, and could this be a major opportunity? Well, I say that a 204.3 was good, and meanwhile Markus Fox, a 203.3, the best part of a second faster than Ulrik, and I think Fox may have got himself back into that zone in terms of the tyres right now. As meanwhile, looking from our P4 driver here to a driver who would like to be battling for P4 later on, that is of course Paco Lara, who's continuing to chase after Rainer Effenstein. After coming out of the pits, Paco Lara is consistently lapping in the mid 204s. I think Lara's had to put quite a bit of fuel into the car, and maybe on the same set of tyres as what they pitted with. And in terms of the rain conditions right now, I can tell you the rain is not letting up. We have still got a lot of cloud over the circuit. We have not seen the rain intensify too much, but we are seeing a bit of a dry line as we see there Lara gets it wrong and has to take evasive action from the apex at turn 15 as we see Christian Ablasser goes to the move on the inside here, and this is not what Lara would have wanted. He's lost the position and now he's got a car ahead of him, and that car has yet to pit at all. They will try and go over the move, I reckon, down into 1 as they make the way onto lap number 27 here. But Ablasser can defend this if he wants to, if he decides to. But as they make the way down into 1, you can see Lara on the inside here, Ablasser on the outside. And under braking, it's the case that Lara's going to get the move done once again as Ablasser stays wide there and doesn't try to contest it with the cutback. But Paco, Lara pushing it to the limit and finding the limit indeed as they make the way for the Mercedes arena. And I do think for Paco, Lara right now, this is looking to be a difficult race as we're hearing that we have also lost Andrés Zafaratos, so we're now down to 17 drivers remaining in this race. Well, no, 18 drivers, my apologies, because we've still got Jesse Monrose, but we have lost Andrés Zafaratos. We are now down to only 18 drivers still able to race as they make their way around on the circuit right now. And meanwhile, as we continue to see Monrose making his way around after his opening pit stop, Rainer Effenstedt in P10. He's in a bit of a no man's land right now, but he will be wary of the fact that Paco Lara is trying to chase after, and Effenstedt is yet to make a pit stop. He's trying to chase after Sylvain Pastores, but Pastores matching him in terms of lap time as they make their way around the circuit, and Effenstedt doing everything he needs to right now to look at a potential just outside the top 10 finish, a P11 or a P12 finish as he comes roaring up towards turn number 11 once again. As he makes his way up and through into the corners here, we can see in the chat we've got Billy Goatboy there saying that with regards to Gad's pitting, so I believe that's Gareth Mills pitting. Unfortunately, it is a retirement. Okay, Gaz Williams is making his way around as well. But if you're referring to what was Gareth Mills, it's because of retirement due to internet connectivity, and Gaz Williams pitting, that was his mandated stop, his first of 2 stops, and he has decided to call in an early stop compared to everybody else. We can see it, we've got Vedabema there in the Twitch chat saying Mesa, Phillips and Lara are the most regular drivers dealing the championship. They are indeed, and as our drivers continue to make their way around right now, we are also hearing that we have had a DNF for Max Manuel. They have had to retire the car, unfortunately, and it's going to be one of those situations whereby they'll be looking at to come back strong another time in the future. We still do have one Jochen Schweizer powered by BMW Machine Racing, and that is the lead car of Ralf Piringer here in P5. But as we come towards the end of the first hour of racing right now, the field has opened up considerably, and we now are in that territory of where it is essentially everybody now racing against the time and the strategy. As we look a little bit further down the order, we can see Ant Brown here coming into the pits again. I think Ant Brown's had an off because he's behind Paul Scott, and he passed Paul Scott early in the race, and Paul Scott has yet to pit. So Ant Brown, I think, has had something go horribly wrong, and this may be to repair damage on the car and also get his second stop out of the way as a result of it. As we also see Volkowski is into the pits already from what was P13 and dropping down the order to P15. And he'll drop even further as we all... Well, it's that case. Those are the only 2 drivers in the pits right now. As meanwhile, Andrés Mesa continues to open up that lead. And that last lap for Andrés Mesa, a 202.1 here. You have to imagine the Spaniards right now must be in the zone. These laps are never leaving the 202s. They just get faster and stay right at the top. As meanwhile, Harry Phillips in the low 203 still and trying to push back into the high 202s. But you have to imagine that Harry Phillips on a 22.2 gap to Andrés Mesa right now. This race is slipping away, and that championship is slipping away from Phillips very rapidly indeed. And Andrés Mesa, our championship leader, of course, just needs to finish ahead of Harry Phillips, but he will want this win. He will want it that much for Distinct GG, and indeed he was rather smiling and confident as he got into the car tonight, I can tell you that, as he makes his way through. And we do have a drive-through penalty here for Andre Jacklin, our P13 driver. Now, is this due to track limits or something else? I am seeing here a drive-through for car 33, and this was on lap 26, turn 1 in the battle with car 45. So that was in the battle with Ant Brown, and this explains what happened to Ant Brown, I think. Failed to maintain behind pit exit line until pit exit ended, causing a collision. So Andre Jacklin not obeying the rule that was conveyed at the start by our driver's briefing, particularly by Kevin Smith, who was saying about respecting that pit exit line, and Andre Jacklin has been attributed with causing a collision with Ant Brown, and that's why Brown is so far down the field. field after getting up through the field again. It is because of Jacqueline, according to our stewards. Of course, something's gone wrong there, and Jacqueline has now got to pay the price for a drive-through penalty. As meanwhile, further behind him, we can see Paul Scott here continuing the pursuit, as we do see Harry Phillips there deciding to go very high on the curbs of what was Vidal's chicane, and Phillips has got his way through. Next driver to lap is Andre Jacqueline for him, and Paul Scott just tucks in behind right now. And I think for Scott, he'll be thinking to himself that he can gain a place on Jacqueline, but remember, Paul Scott has yet to make any pit stops whatsoever, his mandated pit stops, so it could be a situation whereby effectively he's going to drop quite far down the order when he does pit, as Jacqueline has come in to take his drive-through penalty. I can see out my commentary box window right now. And meanwhile, further up, I can tell you that Christian Ablasser chasing after Paco Lara as it currently stands, hunting down the P11 driver here as he makes his way into turn number 8. And it is the case that as we've reached the halfway point, we are now an hour into this 2-hour race. Christian Ablasser is trying to hunt down Lara. The two drivers quite consistent in terms of lap times, but I tell you that Lara has had a disaster of a lap last time around. A 205.5 for Paco Lara, a 204.8 for Christian Ablasser here. And it could be the case that the TUG Racing Esports green driver is able to close up to Lara over the next couple of laps if Lara makes any more mistakes, but we'll have to wait and find out whether the Spaniard can calm it down. As meanwhile, a bit further up the road, we see that Walter Lux is into the pits from what was at the time P6, so as he's in the pits, he's dropping down the order right now. And meanwhile, Markus Fox, well, he's not closed up enough versus Martin Ulrik, and Ulrik right now, you have to say, has broken away quite considerably, with Ulrik standing in the 203s, Fox now in the 204s here, and I think the Porsche driver is starting to slip a bit further backwards as he makes his way through turn number 7 and down towards 8. But remember, for all of our leaders all the way to what is P6, they've yet to pit. Our first driver who's pitted in terms of placement out in the field right now is Gaz Williams, chasing after Fabio Kina here. But he's now got himself some clear air, and Gaz Williams is lapping in the 203s, the mid 203s right now. It's a consistent pace for the Bentley driver, and will he be able to return to P2 once the first round of pit stops is completed? That's a big question, as we see Andrés Mesa is into the pits from the race lead. Now he's got a sizable gap over the rest of the field right now, so this should be a simple stop for the Spaniard. The pit crew, of course, will be out and looking to do this perfectly. But meanwhile, Harry Phillips continues around through turn number 16 here. He does not go to the pits. So the Wild Things Racing driver here is now going to take the race lead. It will be the first lap of the race that he does lead here. And I think this may give him a little bit of a boost in terms of morale as he goes on to take that lead position. But meanwhile, where is Ulrik in all of this? Well, I can tell you that Ulrik is also staying out. He's making his way out to the final corner. And Walter Lux, after pitting, has come out in P10. But Ulrik is going to come across that timeline. Andrés Mesa is still in the pit as he makes his way through, but Ulrik has come up into P2. And what about Piringer? Well, Ralf Piringer from P5, he's come into the pits here, so he's decided enough's enough. He's pitting just after the halfway point, and as he makes his way across the pit limiter line there, you can see just gradually making his way into the pits. Markus Fox has stayed out, and Andrés Mesa has just left his pit box. He's leaving the pit lane here, so the Spaniard will emerge in P4, and he's going to have a nice amount of clear air in front of him here to put the laps in immediately. I think the Distinct GG driver at this point has had quite a lengthy pit stop. It may be the case of put a lot of fuel in the car and decided, you know what, now we've got to go along and do a sprint at the very end. We'll wait and see. But to be fair, in saying that, the fact he's made it over an hour of race means he wasn't lightly fueled to begin with here. So perhaps our call with regards to Harry Phillips doing something different and having a lot more fuel in the car was not well founded. As meanwhile, Rainer Effenstedt is coming into the pits from P9. He's making his way on in, as is Paul Scott, I should say, from P13. So as Effenstedt comes in, this will give Lara the position, but Lara's got a long way to go now in terms of chasing after that top 5 after the incidents earlier on, and we'll wait to see how it all plays about as Walter Lux has come out down in what is P12 and will come up into P11, of course, with the fact that Effenstedt is into the pit right now. But as we can see that Walter Lux comes across the line for TG Racing Esport here to move up into that P11 position. What is going to be the story to tell here as he makes his way across the line, and as he comes all the way down towards turn number 1, he has got Ralf Piringer, who is the best part of 7 seconds up the road from him as they make the way through the Mercedes arena, and he'll be looking to hunt down Piringer as rapidly as possible, as Piringer here making his way through into turn number 3 right now will be chasing after Paco Lara and Christian Christian Ablasser. Of course, Ablasser is yet to pit ahead of them. And meanwhile, Gaz Williams here, you have to say, is chasing after Fabiakina. He is continuing to do so as he makes his way through turns at 9 and 10 as he heads up towards 11, just building that momentum as the Bentley driver as he comes up into the left-hander of 11. And, well, he's not quite on the pace of our race leaders, unfortunately, but it is one of those situations right now where I think he's just trying to inch towards that pace. He was 2 tenths of a second slower that last lap versus what was my apologies there, just looking at our time screens at Martin Ulrik and also 10th starter Harry Phillips as Markus Fox into the pits now from what was P3. So this will re-release, I should say, Andrés Mesa back up into P3 right now. There's still 2 drivers ahead of Mesa who have yet to pit, and that is Harry Phillips and Martin Ulrik. But as all these pit stops are playing out, we will wait to see where Fox comes out. He will hope to come out ahead of what will be Paco Lara, but that will be the big question for him, of course, as you see Paco Lara is making his way up towards Vidal right now. He's just coming through turn 13, so I think Fox may be safe here. We'll just have to wait and find out as we see Lara coming on through. Where's Gaz Williams and all this? Well, Gaz Williams is coming through turn 1, so he has cleared Fox. He's gained that position back as he makes his way on through. Sylvain Pastores has just come down towards turn number 1 here. He's yet to pit. Paco Lara, meanwhile, making their way through turn 16 right now and heading across that timeline. And Fox, we're just waiting. We're looking out our window right now. I think it is the case that Fox is still in his pit box right now as we do see Lara come through. And Fox has just emerged on the pits here. And this is going to be critical as Lara's going to come around the outside into turn 1. And as they roar down, you can see Fox looks for it, but he's not close enough. And Paco Lara, despite everything that's gone wrong, has come back out ahead of Fox, and that is so critical for the Spaniards right now, because if Fox cannot get those tyres up to temperature quickly enough, it will be the case that Lara is able to go hunting after Ulrik once again. And Fox, who was ahead of Lara come the start of the pit stops, it will be the case that now Fox has lost out massively as they make their way out of the Mercedes arena and up towards turn 6. So that's one of the biggest changes we've seen through these pit stops, is the fact that Markus Fox has lost the place to Paco Lara. But meanwhile, it is a situation where Christian Ablasser into the pits from what was P10, and we can see Walter Lux is now coming on through and has taken that P10 back. So Christian Ablasser going very long and now having to drop back down the order as we're still waiting for Harry Phillips and also Martin Ulrik to pit from our main leaders. And we also still got Fabiakina and Sylvain Pastores in our top 10 who have yet to pit. So all these pit stops are really starting to mix things up in the order, and as we are now looking around, we look a little bit further down, we can see Jesse Monroe's the last of our runners as it currently stands in P18, not really close enough to battle with anyone for the time being. And our first driver to clear both of those stops is Ant Brown in P16 right now. He will not need to pit again. I think at this point the Co Brown racing driver here will be just looking to keep it clean, keep it consistent, and try and find a way to get back up towards that top 10 come the end. He's got a long way to go. The next driver on his hit list will be Robert Velkoski, 10.5 seconds up the road as he makes his way through the Vidal chicane. But meanwhile, Martin Ulrik is into the pit. So we have had our P2 man come in, and he's dropped down the order. He's dropped down to what is P6 right now. And where is Paco Lara in all of this? Well, Lara's making his way through Vidal right now, and I believe Ulrik is already left his pit box. So as a result, as Lara comes on through for the final corner, Ulrik is almost at the end of the pit lane here. So Ulrik is going to be safe for the time being and come back out in P6, come out ahead of Lara, come out ahead of Fox. Fox has lost out the most here as we see Paul Scott comes down towards turn 1, and we can see Ulrik there just putting 2 wheels on the white line. I'm not sure if the stewards are going to say something about that, as Scott has to stay out the way there and looks the inside into turn 2. And in fact, Scott has gone for that inside line there, and Ulrik's not got the grip to simply shut the door. Now he's able to, as he's got those tyres slightly switched on, but that was looking a little bit tense there for a moment for Ulrik. And as he comes back out in P6, he'll feel safe for the time being. But here is Paco Lara, who is not too far behind. He's only 1 second behind Ulrik, and Ulrik is having to turn those tyres on and is really struggling to, as you can see, Lara immediately flashes lights there to the McLaren driver who's a lap down to say to Scott, move out of the way, I'm going for that position, I want it. And you can see, look at Lara all over the back of Ulrik, and Ulrik's really struggling as there's contact, and there's a little bit more contact there as Scott also gets into the fray, and this is getting a little bit haphazard as they make their way down towards turn 8 here, and Lara looks the inside immediately. The prototype racing driver's going to go for it. He's striking whilst the iron's hot, and we can see that Fox has come down very heavily on the brakes into the corner, and as they make their way through, Ulrik is really struggling. In fact, Ulrik has lost 2 places. I'm wondering whether that little bit of contact coming through turn 7, plus the fact that he's had that struggle coming out the pits versus Paul Scott, has meant that Ulrik has got no tyre temperature, because it would seem that way. as Ulrik drops all the way back and is really up against it now. There is something wrong with that car. All 30 of those tyres are just not in the operating window, and Ulrik's now got it all to do after what was a brilliant effort on their opening stint, but it's all gone so wrong. And as a result now, Paco, Lara, he's got Markus Fox chasing after him here, but the McLaren driver has found his way through. I think the stewards may have an eyebrow up at what happened there, and they'll try to dissect it, but you have to say, I suspect it will stand. I think it'll be classed as a racing incident, the contact with Ulrik just struggling to get the car and move, and as a result, Lara and Fox now are in a race for P6 out on circuit. But when the pit stops are finished, I believe this is the race for P4 effectively, as they make their way through turn at number 16 onto the start-finish straight to complete lap number 33, and they continue to charge as Ulrik is into the pits immediately here. Something has gone horrifically wrong, and he's coming in again, and this is a disaster for the M Technology driver, who was looking so strong and making a great surge come towards the end of the season, but it has gone wrong in the season finale. And will he be able to recover it after his second pit stop? Of course, he will clear his second stop if he's taking the stop right now, and it will be the situation whereby Paco, Lara and Markus Fox both have to pit once again. We'll wait and see, but this is a major turn in the towel in the battle for P4, as meanwhile just up the road, the best part of 22 seconds up the road and still going, it should be pointed out, the Rinaldi Racing driver of Sylvain Pastores has yet to make his first pit stop. He's in P5, he's enjoying himself out there, consistently lapping in the low to mid 204s and just simply keeping it clean, not doing anything dramatic, just simply putting the car to the circuit. And Fabio Kina as well up in P3 right now, and where will these guys come out when they do their first pit stops? That's the big question. Because you can imagine, Sylvain Pastores, before the pit stops started, was in P11. He's now up into P5. Fabio Kina, who was P9, is now up into P3. Could they jump multiple places here with everything that's happened? I'm putting my money on Fabio Kina in particular is going to be coming out in that battle for P6, P7. As you can see, Gaz Williams comes on through, and it is the case. Fabio Kina comes into the pits as Gaz Williams now takes back P3, and we'll see how Fabio Kina plays out as they make their way around, and Gaz Williams goes on to another lap. Meanwhile, Harry Phillips just continues out there like a trooper, in all honesty, not having to worry about the fuel, it would seem, right now, and focusing on just putting in lap after lap. Now, how long will this last for? You have to wonder. That is the question. Andrés Mesa is approximately 5 to 6 tenths a lap faster than the Wild Things Racing driver. Distinct GG is closing down the noose on this race as they make their way around the circuit. But Fabio Kina, meanwhile, he's dropped to P5 with Sylvain Pastores staying out. Here's Paco, Lara coming into turn 16 right now, coming into the final corner. Markus Fox is only a second behind here as Fabio Kina cut off the jacks. Not yet, so he's still there in the pit box. So I think Paco, Lara and Markus Fox are both going to come through. Then the next driver after them is Piringer, who's now come out the final corner. Where's Fabio Kina and all this? He's coming out the pits here. So Fabio Kina has jumped from P9 to P7, it would seem, as Paul Scott comes down towards turn 1 there, a lap down, and we can see Fabio Kina holds on to P7 as Piringer has dropped the place here, and as a result, Piringer has lost out, whereas Kina has gained massively here. He's gained 2 places, and we're hearing that track temperature has now dropped by a further degree to 16 degrees Celsius, and as a result, this will affect the tyres even more, and some drivers will be affected more than others, as Harry Phillips finally decides to take his first pit stop of this race. He comes into the pit, and I would presume it will be Andrés Mesa, who we are looking at right now, who will retake the lead here. He's got traffic ahead of him. That's Nesta Mejia ahead of him, who's in P11 right now, but as he makes his way through Vidal here, you can see behind that is Ulrik, who's a lap down, but he has cleared his second stop after doing repair work to the car. I'd be interested to know what exactly has happened to Ulrik's car following that first pit stop, because nothing seemed to be right. But as he makes his way down towards turn 1, we can see that Harry Phillips in the pits here. Meanwhile, Andrés Mesa retakes the lead. He retakes the lead from Harry Phillips as he makes his way down towards turn 1. Where is Gaz Williams? Well, he's making his way out the final corner right now. Where is Gaz Williams going to be in relation to Harry Phillips? Well, Harry Phillips is still in his pit box as it comes. In fact, Phillips has just left his pit box and he's made his way out on circuit. So Phillips has just jumped Gaz Williams here by going long. And this is where the strategy element comes in. After 1 pit stop is the case. Andrés Mesa's gap to Harry Phillips is 14 seconds. Meanwhile, Harry Phillips has jumped Gaz Williams to P2. But you can imagine Gaz Williams now will see the carrot and he'll go chasing after it. And that carrot is the Wild Things Racing machine, which he will want to take the P2 back off as they make their way on round once again through the Mercedes arena. But this race is opening up considerably as we check in with you guys and girls in the chat, as we say hello to Max Maliar in the YouTube chat there, who unfortunately with that retirement is no longer racing today, but is still tuning in, I think, to support his teammate and also to enjoy all things racing, as his teammate right now is going hunting after Fabio Kina here and is doing so at a very rapid rate of knots. Piringer having lost out massively on that opening pit stop, having to chase down the Aston Martin ahead of him as they make their way down into turn 1. And I think at this point it's Piringer who's literally going to give it everything he can to hunt down that P7 and then go after Fox. And Fox has already broken away from Paco Lara. In fact, he's broken away and then, well, sorry, Fox has dropped away, I should say, from Paco Lara and then some. And I think Fox has had a couple of nightmare laps because that gap has opened up to 6 seconds. Last time we checked 3 laps ago, it was a second the gap. It's opened up to 6 seconds, and Paco Lara seems to be flying right now and hunting down positions further up the field. But speaking of positions further up the field, the question that many of you will be asking, when is Sylvain Pastorius, the Rinaldi Racing driver, the Swiss, going to pit? That is a question that I'm still asking as well. Surely he's got to pit soon, because this is an absolutely Herculean stint that he's done so far. He's yet to take a pit stop. He's in P4. He is going to drop down the order considerably once the pit stop is complete, but you can imagine that he's looking to try and gain as much as possible and then have a much shorter pair of stints where he can essentially put in qualifying laps, and perhaps this has got him clear of some battles, and perhaps it's given him the opportunity to hunt a top 10 come the end, which I think would be a great way for Sylvain to finish off his season after the trials and tribulations he has been through over the 7 rounds that we've had so far. But meanwhile, whilst this is going on, I can tell you that Gaz Williams is continuing to hunt down Harry Phillips. That last lap, it was the case that Gaz Williams was able to close up a couple of attempts as they make their own through, and Sylvain Pastorius is now into the pits. So as a result, Sylvain Pastorius on call with 45 minutes to go. Get our numbers in the right order. It is the case that Sylvain Pastorius has finally come in, and I think that's going to drop him out behind Ralf Piringer in the battle for P9 with Walter Lux. We'll wait and see. But meanwhile, we can see that Phillips versus Gaz Williams. Williams is continuing to close down, just gradually bearing down on him. A couple attempts here, a couple attempts here. But let's look to Sylvain Pastorius, who's parked in the pits right now. He's dropped down to P4. And we can see that Paco Lara's got it wrong coming out the final corner. So chasing after Fabio Kina here. And in fact, he's dropped behind. He's dropped behind multiple drivers here. As we can see now, it's the case that he's returned to the circuit. And I think Paco Lara just simply went wide out of the final corner. He's lost P4 and P5, and Kina has got up to P5 now. And where is Walter Lux? He's coming down into turn 1. Sylvain is still up on the jacks right now, and it's Effenstedt who's making his way into what is turn number, I think that's turn number 12 there. So I think Sylvain Pastorius is actually going to come out when all is said and done. He comes out in P9 here. He has gained 2 places through going this long. He has simply jumped ahead of Effenstedt. He's jumped ahead of Magia. It is a case that Pastorius now, the world is his oyster, because you have to imagine for him, if he can make one more short stop and simply keep the pace he's been running, he could potentially be targeting well inside the top 10. He's P9 right now, and I think he will have that P9 as long as he keeps it consistent. But how far can he go? That is the big question. As meanwhile, it is the case that Fabio Kina has now got Paco Lara bearing down on him once again after Lara's made a mistake somewhere. And as they come through turn 8 and head up towards turns 9 and 10, we'll wait for the stewards to confirm whether it was just a mistake or whether there was an instant with another driver. But Paco Lara is not having a happy moment right now. As you can see, sliding there through turn 9, the rear end of that McLaren just wanting to slide through turn 9 and up into 10. And as they come through into the braking zone for 11 here, the heavy braking zone at 100 metre wood, we can see that Kiena now has to think about whether he defends or whether he simply lets the rabid McLaren driver through and focuses on trying to consolidate what is a P6 or P7 if Piringer gets close enough to look for the move. As he makes his way down towards turn number 14, down towards Vidal here. We have 42.5 minutes remaining. We have had a very dramatic race so far. There's still more drama to be had, and it is the case that right now as they come roaring up through Vidal, we can see Kina goes a bit deep and rides high on the turn 15 apex. And as we look back to the cameras now, we can see it's a situation where Lara is starting to get closer. He's starting to mount that pressure. And as we ride on board and look back from the Aston Martin driver Fabio Kina here, the Tamir Racing driver from Switzerland, he's got the Spaniard all over his 6 as they make their way down. And meanwhile, you can see up front it is the case that Harry Phillips is in a similar situation with Gaz Williams in terms of being pursued. But as we look to Lara here and we looked into turn 1, it is the case that Lara's looking for that move. He can't quite find it for now. He is trying to find it in terms of going for that early move, but he cannot get it at this time, and instead I think he's going to wait for the... Oh goodness me, Fabio Kina gets on the power too soon and is into the wall. And the Mercedes Arena comes drifted across the circuit, and Piringer just misses the way with Aston Martin, and Keener gets immediately out of the way there, and Keener just getting on the power too soon on the exit of turn 2, losing both places, and Walter Lux now will be coming out of the Mercedes Arena thinking, what's happened to Fabio? Well, I'll take that position if I can, as they come charging up towards turn 6 here, and the tyres just being pushed a little bit too hard there from the Aston Martin driver, as now Walter Lux tries to find his way past the P7 driver and make his way further up the field. Can he do it? That'll be the big question as they make the way out of turn 7 and down towards turn 8. Meanwhile, further up the field, I can tell you that Harry Phillips does have Gaz Williams closing up to him. We saw it only moments ago, and now as we ride on board here with Gaz Williams, we ride on the dashboard, you can see up ahead is the World Things Racing machine, which is being chased here by Gaz Williams as he charges down towards turn 1 as they make the way onto lap number 39 here. The tension builds in the battle for P2. As it's Bentley versus Bentley here. It's a battle of the Britons as they make the way through the hairpin and head up into 2, and you can see both drivers there squirming to get on the power, to get out of first gear into second gear as they make the way through 2. They head up into 3, both of them right on the threshold, of course, and knowing where the grip is, knowing where the power is, as we do see Phillips goes a little bit deep. He takes a deep line now, I think feeling a little bit of the dirty air coming off of Christian Ablasser ahead, who may play a role in this battle between the two of them as they come roaring out of 4 and 5 and head up towards 6 here into the braking zone they come. And as we continue to ride on board with Williams for the best part of this lap, you can see that right now Phillips is feeling that pressure, and I do think he is experiencing some difficulty running behind Ablasser as well as they make the way through 7 and now head down towards 8 here, but Phillips not looking composed by comparison with Williams, who's just building that pressure here as they make the way down towards the second of the 3 hairpins on this circuit. And as they come into turn 8, they make the way through the double apex, and as they come all the way around now, you can imagine that Phillips will be hoping that Ablasser moves out the way at the most opportune moment here. The blue flags are being waved for Christian as they make their way through 9 and 10, and as they come all the way up the hill towards 11 here, here's a situation right now where Phillips will not be feeling comfortable. He will have another Bentley bearing down on him as they make their way through the corner. Ablasser moves out the way for the pair of them, costing neither of them time overall, and as they make their way through 12, you see Phillips goes a little bit wide once again, right on the limits the Wild Things Racing driver. As they come out the corner and head up towards 14, they head down towards Vidal, they build up the power. We look to the exterior cameras here, and it is a case that this is building up to be one titanic fight. It's not the battle for the lead, but it's the battle for P2, and it is one not to be discounted as they make their way through Vidal here, and you can just see in the composure of the two cars, it does look as though Williams has got a lot more to play with by comparison to Phillips as they come through 16 and come to the end of the lap, and this is the closest that Williams has been. Will he be able to look for a move down into 1 here? It's the long run down towards turn 1. There's only 38 minutes remaining come the end of this next lap, and as they make the way all the way down towards 1, Williams is looking for it. Will he go for it from that far back? Surely not. No, he waits. He waits for an opportunity, and he decides it's not the right time. I think it's smart right now. I think he's just trying to build that pressure. He's trying to put the pressure on, just put the squeeze on Phillips' hopes of winning the race, and instead make him look further behind him as they make the way down into turn 3 in the Mercedes Arena right now. And this time Phillips is able to nail the turn 3 apex. Williams a little bit slow off the apex there, but able to stay right tucked in behind his opponent as they make the way out of 4 and 5 and head down towards 6. Both in equal machines, of course, both dependent on the setups and the driver's ability right now, and both drivers at the very top of their performance and their field, of course, but it now all comes down to one driver making a mistake, or Williams just simply finding a better way of getting out of the corner, getting that power down as they come down towards turn 8 once again on lap number 40. And as they come on down, we can see here we do have a bold prediction in the YouTube chat from JoDoc17, which is for Lux to win, Ablasser P2 and FSJ in P3, TJ Racing for the win. And we see Don Quixote92 there in the Twitch chat wishing on Paco, Lara, and Paco, Lara, as we skip away from this battle for P2 right now, is once again closing up to Markus Fox quite rapidly here. He is starting to build up that pressure as they make the way out in the Mercedes Arena, and a bit further back we can see that Walter Lux is all over the back here of what is Fabio Keener as they make the way out of the Mercedes Arena in the battle for P7, and Keener with that mistake of him running a little bit wide there and actually clattering the front left wheel over the curbing, meaning he's going to lose a little bit more performance up towards turn number 6, and as they make their way through 6 and 7 here, we can see that Fabio Kina really struggling for rotation through the corners here. I do think that Lux is going to be looking for a move in a very short order of time as they come ruin down the hill towards turn number 8. Into the hairpin they go, but Lux will not send it from this far back. He's going to wait. He'll want to put as much pressure on Kina before he finally goes to the move. He's just simply biding his time. You can see now he's getting ever closer, and as we ride on board here, it's that case. We were going to ride on board, but it's Kina who's made a mistake. They go side by side into 9, and Kina backs out of it here as Lux makes the move. A very nice move from Lux as they now come up towards turn at number 11. He'll go briefly defensive before returning to the racing line here. Kina not able to look for a way back. He hasn't got the overspeed. Lux up into P7. Fabio Kina down into P8. Meanwhile, in the battle for P2, it's a case that Gaz Williams still tucked in behind Harry Phillips right now as they go through the Mercedes arena once again. It only takes one brief mistake for one of these drivers to lose out in this battle, and we can see here as they come down towards 6, no change. That gap 4 tenths of a second, it's staying as it was the last time we looked, and it does look as though here that Gaz Williams does have a bit of control of this one. But to be fair, we know how strong Harry Phillips can be in terms of defensive driving. We know that he can place that car and make that Bentley even wider than it already is, and as they make their way down towards 8, Williams will be aware of that. He will have done his research. He'll know what Phillips can do. They'll both know that they're in a capable machine and they need to get the most out of it as they come out of 8 and head up towards the Schumacher S of 9 and 10. Up ahead of them they do have Andre Jacqueline, who is in P12, a lap down. Of course they'll be coming up to lap him as they make their way on through. But meanwhile, looking from this battle to a little bit further back, we can see Piringer here in P6, just simply keeping it together right now. No major theatrics on the BMW driver, who's looking on course to just finish outside the top 5 by a small margin. He's got Paco, Lara 3.1 seconds up the road. Could he potentially close down the McLaren driver over the course of the final pit stop? We will wait and see, of course, whether he's able to pull that off as they make their way on through. And meanwhile, behind, we can see that Walter Lux, after passing Kina, has now got the gap open to 1.1 seconds. He's feeling safe for the time being as they make their way through turn 7 and down towards 8. But meanwhile, looking back up towards our battle for P2, that gap between Williams and Phillips continues to stay there, whereas our leader, who we briefly look at here, Andrés Mesa, is already into the Mercedes arena. He is the best part of 31 seconds ahead of Phillips and Williams. And barring any unfortunate or very sudden instant now or a mistake of his own doing, I do think the Spaniard has got this one in his power, in his control, as he makes his way down towards turn number 6 once again here. As he comes roaring on through, we look a bit further down the order. We look towards the back of the order to see Magia here in P16 right now, who's in a bit of lonely P16. He does have Paul Scott keeping him honest, however, only 4.7 seconds behind. But the next driver up the road for the P16 man is Ant Brown in P15. He's 26.5 seconds up the road, and I do think that with the fact that Ant Brown has already made 2 pit stops and Magia has made 2 pit stops as well, Magia now is just focusing on cruising to the end and trying to pick up some places where he can. Indeed, it has quietened down a little bit in the midfield. Everybody now seems to be running their race and running their pace and just keeping it together. As we can see, Ulrik here has found a way past Effenstedt. He's in P10 and he's continuing to soldier his way up through the field. I think Effenstedt has made a mistake somewhere out on circuit because we didn't hear the pass coming up, but we can see that Ulrik has made 2 stops after that unfortunate first stop, leaving the car in a terrible state. As we see, he slides his way there through the Schumacher S, and I do think there might still be a problem with that Mercedes, but he's nursing it. He is now trying to chase after some more places in that top 10. But meanwhile, looking back up to the battle for P2 here, it's a case with 33 minutes remaining, no change so far as they make their way around. And we look to the chats, of course, in the broadcast, and we can see there Yilin Ding in the YouTube chat saying, yeah, TUG, enjoying the TUG drivers racing, of course, and Walter Lux in that P7 position and continuing his way up the field. We are just checking in with our stewards as well. We're not hearing anything with regards to any further stewarding at this point in time, so I think it is the case that everybody just racing to the best of their capabilities right now and keeping it as clean as they possibly can. And I think we are into a little bit of a quiet phase in the race where we are waiting for a battle to erupt and potentially his battle for P2. But it does look as though Gaz Williams, now that he's got close to the back of Phillips, has lost that tempo. He's not quite able to get close enough to make that potential move, and perhaps Williams is now trying to do a bit of fuel saving behind Phillips. Perhaps he's just trying to find some magical way of keeping in the rearview mirror of Phillips and then just putting the pressure on. And we'll wait and see. But it does look as though Phillips has settled the car down and can now continue to maintain that P2 for the time being, and Gaz Williams just watches on here as they make their way through the Mercedes arena. I'm sure if Phillips even dares make one tiny mistake, Williams is going to be there immediately to take that position, to take that P2 off of him as they make their way out the Mercedes arena right now and down towards turn number 6. Of course, it could be the case that Williams is waiting for the pair of them to catch up to Andrés Jacquelin and hoping that could play a pivotal role. You never know. But meanwhile, looking further down the order in P14, Robert Velkoski here, the back-to-motion driver, who after the penalty earlier on, the German now chasing after Christian Ablas, who is the best part of 15 seconds up the road. But you have to imagine Velkoski will lose this place to Ant Brown when he does pit, with Ant Brown having made those 2 pit stops already. And meanwhile, with all this going on, I can tell you that Paco Lara has been reeled in considerably here by Ralf Piringer. And as we ride on board and look back from the McLaren driver in P5, something has gone wrong that previous lap, because it was the case that Ralf Piringer was a whole second faster and Markus Fox up the road was a whole second faster as well. And I do think that Lara perhaps is just starting to struggle now towards the end here. The intensity of the rain hasn't let up. It's not as though we've got majorly changing conditions, but Lara does seem to be unsettled to a degree in this car, and we can see that Piringer just waiting now to pounce as they make their way through turn 6 once again here. That Mercedes looming large in the rear view mirror of the McLaren driver as they make their way through 7. And I think for Piringer, if he can keep this presence, if he can keep this pressure up and Lara makes one more mistake, he could be reclaiming that P5 before we know it, as they make their way down towards the turn 8 hairpin here, building up that speed. And as they come into the braking zone, it doesn't look as though Piringer's close enough to make a move at the moment, but you can imagine if this continues as is, he will be there soon as they come on through. And we're hearing that Andrés Jacquelin has come into the pits once again for what is going to be his final pit stop of the day. Andrés Jacquelin from P12, he's coming on in right now. Christian Ablas goes on through and continues around, and Jacquelin's going to drop some way down the order, as we can also see Robert Velkoski here making his way for an Ant Brown 20 seconds back, who has made both of his pit stops, so we expect that Jacquelin is going to come up behind Ant Brown in P15. But whilst this is happening, we do look back up to our battle for P2, and we can see Gaz Williams now has closed up once again as we ride on board with Gaz Williams here as he chases after Harry Phillips coming out of the Mercedes arena, and both drivers they're squirming for a bit of tyre grip as they made the way out of 4 through 5 and up into 6. And as Gaz Williams continues his pursuit here, it's a situation whereby he's not able to find a way on through, but Phillips feeling a bit more pressure, and you can just see not as settled this time coming through 7. And I think that's what Williams has been waiting for. He's been waiting for Phillips to have one tiny mistake, and then he can start to look to pounce as they come down towards turn 8 once again for the 44th time of asking. And it does look as though Phillips has gone a bit deep, but there's no way through this time. But Williams will know now that Phillips is vulnerable, and as they come roaring up towards turn number 11, they go for the Schumacher S's here of 9 and 10. You can see just how much pressure Williams is applying here to be consistently there and all over the back of your rival in these conditions, in the wet, in the identical car as well, is a feat on itself. And as they make their way through 11, he is all over the back of his fellow Bentley drivers. They come through turn number 12, and as the helicam gives you an idea of just how close they are when you look at the two of them from the exterior perspective, as Paco Lara is into the pits, as is Jesse Monroe's. But we can see that Paco Lara coming in here for his final stop, and meanwhile focusing on the battle for P2 is the situation whereby Phillips, well, he's got Gaz Williams looking for that move into 14. He can't quite find it, just again trying to get into Phillips' head, trying to get Phillips to miss his braking point, make a mistake. But you see Gaz Williams has gone a bit deep under braking and almost having the rear end there slide at the very end, but he's collected the car together for the time being. But Gaz Williams just a little bit too adventurous under braking, and now that gap has opened up from 3 tenths of a second to 6 tenths of a second. It may not seem like much, 3 tenths, but closing those 3 tenths down over the course of a lap here between two drivers who are so equal in pace is something very challenging to do, and Gaz Williams knows all about it now as they make their way around for another lap here. Williams literally pushing to limit, both of them pushing to limit, but Phillips, whilst he's making small little mistakes, is not making as big mistakes as what Williams made there in the run up towards 16, and that's the difference right now as the race leader continues to disappear off up the road. 26 seconds is his advantage right now. But Phillips and Williams are in this never-ending contest for P2, as meanwhile we can tell you that Paco Lara, after pitting, has come out in P10 behind what is Martin Ulrik. And Ulrik, to be fair, has already made his second and final stop. He made it quite early because of technical difficulties with the car. They've had to repair them, and Lara is now 3 seconds behind, but Ulrik will battle for position. He will not want Lara coming through, and Lara now has got a major challenge on their hands, which is they've got to find their way past the M Technology machine and then try to close up to the drivers who've yet to pit up up ahead, such as Sylvain Pastores, Fabio Kina and Walter Lux, as they see Ulrik making his way through the Schumacher S once again here, and Paco Lara only 3.5 seconds behind, as meanwhile we look a bit further up the field and we can see here that Markus Fox has got a nice comfortable 8-second gap over Ralf Piringer and is just continuing around and looking to finish P4 at this rate, subject to the pit stops and how they play out, with 27 minutes of racing to go. And meanwhile, back in that battle for P2, well, if you wanted it close, it continues to stay close as we look back here from Harry Phillips, who's now got Rena Effenstein, who will need to clear through a back marker. And as they make their way through 13 and up into 14 here, we come right up into the braking zone. We can see Rena Effenstein moving out of the way of both drivers here. He doesn't want to get involved in this and face a stewards inquiry afterwards. He doesn't want those blue flags being waved any more than he has to. We can see that the two Bentley drivers continuing to go toe-to-toe as Williams gets the better break into the turn 16 hairpin this time. He doesn't make the mistake twice, and as they come out of the corner here, we can see that whilst Phillips gets the better exit initially with the slipstream there and the equality of the machines, Williams is able to start to close up, but it's not enough. He's still too far back, 4 tenths. He needs to be within 2 tenths coming out of that final corner, or at least coming across that timeline to have a shot at moving to turn 1. But this is how close it is, and right now I can only imagine what Phillips must be going through in the cockpit in terms of the amount of pressure he's feeling, as we can see that both drivers right on the limit there. Phillips in particular, the rear end squirming coming out of 2, and as they make their way across the apex of 3, going for that late apex, Williams falling back a little bit at first, but as they come out of 4 through 5, it is the case that Williams just not able to hold there for the time being and falls back a little bit further as they make their way up into 6. 26 minutes remaining. And as these two are battling on, and we can see that Paco Lara is starting to close up to Ulrik very gradually. That gap has come down by a couple of attempts since he's left the pits. As he makes his way now down towards turn number 8 here and continues to push all as much as he can, the prototype racing team driver, but he's got a lot of work to do to close up to Ulrik, it should be said, as he makes his way around. Meanwhile, in terms of drivers out on circuit, I can tell you the one driver in P8 right now, and he has got our race leader 10.5 seconds behind him looking to lap him. That is Sylvain Pastores, who is holding on to a very good race so far and is yet to make his second pit stop, but when he does, of course, we'll be interested to see where he drops down in all of the order as he makes his way out of the final corner. But whilst he's making his way on through, we see that Harry Phillips versus Gaz Williams, again the closest battle on circuit, and we keep coming on back to it because of how close this battle is. It is a case that Gaz Williams just cannot seem to find the last couple of attempts he needs to be able to put that pressure on to make that move. At the moment he is relying on Phillips to make mistakes, and Phillips just seems to be an unconquerable in terms of the fact that he's just not making any significant errors, little weaves, little mistakes in terms of the power going down a little too soon perhaps, but nothing major, nothing that's costing him the ability to hold on that position, as we both see, as they both I should say, come out of turn number 16 and head down towards 1 once again. And looking further afield right now, we do see that our race leader, well, he's a long way out the road now, 27.5 or 27 seconds is Andrés Mesa, as they all come across that timing line. And as we see Phillips versus Williams here coming through one and into the Mercedes arena once again. We do have quite the field behind them starting to build up, but just up the road from these two, we do have Martin Ulrik and also Paco Lara, who are the best part of 6 seconds up the road. And you can imagine if Ulrik is caught up by Paco Lara and they start to battle, could they potentially have their battle being caught up to by these two? And if so, what will happen if these two do catch up to them? We'll have to wait and see, as Gaz Williams is the closest he's been for some time now in the exit of the Mercedes arena, coming up into 6 here. That gap did briefly come down to 2 tenths of a second, and that's what Williams needs. He needs to be within 3 tenths. He needs to be within 3 tenths coming out of the corner, so that way he can use the toe. But as you can see, he's had to come off the racing line there. He's had to get some water on those tyres. He's starting to heat the tyres up, pushing so hard, and also in the dirty hot air coming off the back of the Bentley in front of him. That's where Gaz Williams is just having the difficulty. He can make it 90% of the way there, and it's that final 10% he needs before he can go on the offensive. But he's very close this time, Gaz Williams, as they come through the Schumacher S's here, but he's just not able to maintain that momentum and stay close enough for a moment, almost within a tenth of a second. But as they come into the braking zone here, he's all over the back of Harry Phillips, but he just cannot get enough of that gap down as they make their way through turn at number 12. And I think this time he's going to be very close as they make their way, and we ride on board once again with the second of the two Bentley Motorsport drivers. But as they come through turn at number 30, you can see just the difference between the two, and it would seem as though Harry Phillips is running a little bit less downforce on his car by comparison, because he just makes that initial gain in the exit of each corner. He's able to build up more speed initially, as we see Gaz Williams then making a little bit of a moment out of turn 15, but it hasn't cost him any time. It's kept him nice and close as they come out of turn 16, and we can see now Harry Phillips taking to the centre of the road, trying to get some cold water onto those tyres, trying to cool the car down as they make the way down towards turn 1 once again before rejoining the racing line. Both drivers literally driving on the limit here, as we are hearing that Andrés Mesa has had a moment up the road. I'm not sure what's happened here, but his last lap was a 2:11.4. So Andrés Mesa has made a mistake, or something has happened with another car. But what it does mean is the gap between himself and the battle for P2 has now dropped down to 20 seconds. So he's lost the best part of 8 seconds on one lap. I don't think that's going to be too much in terms of disrupting his race. He's still comfortably in control of this race, but he will now have that in his mind. Of course, one mistake, could it lead to a domino effect, and another mistake? Surely not. With the amount of control he's exercised over this race, we'll have to wait and see. But meanwhile, Phillips versus Williams here, this is just simply not going to go away anytime soon. 21.5 minutes remaining, a pit stop remaining as well for the pair of them right now. Either way it goes, you can imagine if Williams hits and goes to the undercut here, Harry Phillips will have to respond immediately unless he's got an ace up his sleeve, because this right now could go either way on the strategy as they make their way on through. And meanwhile, Paco Lara is continuing to chase after Ulrik. These two are just up the road from the battle for P2, it should be pointed out, and Lara is closing up to Ulrik by a couple of tenths a lap. That last lap, it was a tenth that was gained, but Lara is gradually closing up to the back of the M Technology Mercedes ahead of him. But when he does close up, will he be able to find a way through, or will Ulrik prove to be a defensive wall? That is the challenge that he's going to have to face as they make their way on around. And as they continue to make their way through turn 12 and up towards 13, you can imagine it is not going to be a major upset for Ulrik in terms of he'll be able to hold on, as meanwhile Lara has to continue to push on, and Phillips versus Gaz Williams behind is getting closer to these two. So Lara, if he's going to get this move done, he needs to do it quickly as he makes a mistake there through Vidal. And meanwhile Phillips versus Gaz Williams there, as we see Williams gets the better run once again, but there's just not enough straight line in order to get the move done, and there's not enough of a mistake from Phillips. It's these tiny little margins that Williams has, but it's not enough. He needs a bigger margin to close this gap down. The two of them are matching one another in terms of lap time, separated on that lap by only 12 thousandths of a second. That is an absolutely tiny margin. It shows how close these two are, and as they come through turn 1 and into the Mercedes arena once again, it's one of those situations where Phillips versus Williams, it's just not going to end. I think it is going to be the strategy that determines this one, because right now you'd have to imagine that with Williams this close and not able to find that advantage, he needs Phillips to make a mistake, but Phillips is going to be the last person who makes a mistake. That consistency from the Wild Things Racing driver is something on another planet as they make their way down towards 6. But meanwhile, whilst this is going on, I can tell you that Walter Lux right now in P6 is chasing after Piringer. He is outlapping Piringer by the best part of a second on that last lap, but that may have been a mistake from Piringer on that last lap. We will wait and monitor the situation as we can see that Lux makes his way through the final corner, goes a bit deep however and turns it into a wide apex, and Piringer has just come back onto the race pace, so it was a mistake on that last lap from Piringer, and in fact Lux then matched him in terms of lap time still, as we see Fabi Keener behind is falling back a little bit further in the battle for P5, but as they come on through, we look a bit further down, we can see Paco Lara is now, oh goodness me, and Lara's had a major moment, and we can see Harry Phillips and also Gaz Williams coming on through as Lara's gone wide in the Mercedes arena on the exit, and as they, well no, that's not the Mercedes arena, my apologies, that's coming through the Schumacher S's, and Lara there has lost the car, I think, coming through turns 9 and 10 and run wide and rejoined, but we can see that Gaz Williams has fallen a bit further back with everything that's happened here, and Phillips has now got a gap of a second over his fellow Bentley driver, so as a result here, Lara will not be mounting that challenge versus Ulrik anytime soon. This has gone wrong for what is Paco Lara, and Ulrik is now safe to continue in P9 and potentially gain more places when the pit stops all play in. We are still waiting for that final set of pit stops to start occurring. We've got 18 minutes to go by the time these guys come down towards and through turn 1, and anything can happen of course, but right now you have to imagine that Paco Lara will be trying to nurse that car with that run wide once again. He'll give it his best. I'm sure he'll chase down Ulrik as best as he can, but Paco Lara is definitely starting to feel the pinch on that McLaren as they will go deeper and deeper into this race. That McLaren is not the happiest place right now, as we do see that Harry Phillips has been closed up once again despite Gaz Williams having a poor last lap around. And that gap of a second has already come down to 6/10 of a second. It has not lasted very long. But that is the thing. Again, Gaz Williams seems to be able to close up in relatively clear air or slightly dirty air. But as soon as he's hit by the wall of dirty air off the back of the Wild Things machine, he's not able to close up anymore. But I say that he was within 2/10 there. And he's still within 2/10 as they make their way through turn number 7 here. Could Phillips have finally hit a wall in terms of the tyres? We'll have to wait and see as they come out of 7 and they roar down towards 8 here. But Williams is looking much closer as they come down the hill towards the turn 8 hairpin. They've got Paco Lara behind them who's a lap down and will be thinking, come on guys, I can lap faster than this, get a move on. But Phillips meanwhile won't be thinking about that. He'd be grateful if Lara was to go and try and unlap himself versus Williams, but surely Lara wouldn't consider that as they make their way through turns 9 and 10, because otherwise they'd be hell to pay from the stewards as they make their way through the Schumacher S's. And this is again where Williams just doesn't have enough in the tank. He's got the ability to get so close, but as soon as he's that close, he starts to lose out. It's just the heat that's coming off the back of Williams' car, the loss of downforce, as we hear Fabio Kina's into the pits, as is Sylvain Pastorius. They're both into the pits here. I think they're reacting to Paco Lara having a moment, and we'll wait to see what happens there. As meanwhile, Gaz Williams, he's very close this time. He's within a 10th as they make the way up towards Vidal. Will he look for it? Not this time, but he is starting to get ever closer, Gaz Williams. As we see, Phillips makes a complete hand fist there of the Vidal chicane. Has to go defensive into turn 16. And as they come through the hairpin here, we can see it's now fully on here with Phillips making a mistake. It's finally happened. And the wall is now starting to be broken down as they come across the timing line onto lap 51. 16 minutes to go. The battle for P2 is on as they make their way down towards the turn 1 hairpin. Phillips defends the inside. Williams tries to go all the way around the outside, looking for the potential cutback here, hoping that Phillips will go deep, and he's able to hold it there. Phillips parks it on the apex. He doesn't go deep. He holds the line, but look at Gaz Williams all over the back of Phillips as they make the way through 2. Up into 3 they go. Phillips closes the door before Williams is able to barge it open as they make their way through 3. We can see Paco Lara's patience is being tested as he looks to try and unlap himself, but as they come out the corner right now, you can imagine that Williams will literally what he's saying with the curses under his breath. Stay there, Lara, don't get involved in this, let me have my chance. But Phillips has held off Williams for the time being as they make their way through 6 and up into 7. But it does look as though now that pressure is mounted, and surely Phillips may consider doing a pit stop at the end of this lap, because this pressure is untenable right now for Phillips. If there's going to be another mistake, if one more mistake occurs, I think that will be it in terms of the battle as they make their way through turn 8. They come through the hairpin, the second of the 3 hairpins. I can tell you that Sven Pastorius has come out in P10 after the pit stop. Meanwhile, it's the case that Fabio Kina has come back out in P7, so he has made it back into P7 ahead of Ulrik, Paco Lara, and Pastorius by comparison has come out only 7 seconds behind Paco Lara, so we'll wait and see how that plays out. But Pastorius has just come out in P10 and guaranteed himself a P10 when this is all done. But meanwhile, we can see that Phillips is continuing to feel that pressure here, and remember, the more these two battle, the more Paco Lara is going to be backed up into Sven Pastorius, so soon Pastorius can match the pace of these guys. But to be fair, these guys are pacing in the low 204s on average, or the high 203s, even with their battling, and Sylvain Pastorius will need to catch up to that pace as they make their way up into Vidal. And this time, Phillips does nail the chicane very well here as they make their way on through. And will we see one into pits? We see Gaz Williams into the pits. It's the undercut. Williams is going for the undercut, and now Phillips will surely have to respond. He needs to put in either a colossal lap and pit, or alternatively put in phenomenal laps, nose to tail, and hope that Gaz Williams comes out in traffic. As meanwhile, Andrés Mesa continues to make his way out around on circuit. He's still in the lead. He's got a gap of 26 seconds to everybody else in the field as a minimum. There is no way through strategy, surely, that Andrés Mesa is going to lose out on this lead right now. If he's going to lose the lead, it will be his own doing, or an unfortunate instant with a back marker as he makes his way through turns 6 and 7 here. The world is his oyster as he comes out of turn 7. But Gaz Williams with that pit stop. Markus Fox, meanwhile, heading up towards Vidal right now. And I do think that Gaz Williams will have timed this pit stop right. He will not get traffic. He'll have Jesse Monrose, who's just come across the timeline ahead of him as Gaz Williams has cleared his pit stop. Where will Gaz Williams come out? He's just coming out of the pits now, so as he crosses that line in terms of the pit limiter line and makes his way down towards turn number 1. He's got Jesse Monrose the best part of 7 seconds up the road, but that's good enough in terms of clear air. He will not be impacted by Jesse Monrose for a significant period of time, with Monrose lapping in what is the 206s, and Gaz Williams we expect lapping in the 203s. He'll catch up within a couple of laps, that's certain, but I think that Williams will need those 2 laps to his advantage, and it will not be a major pain when he catches up to Monrose, given the fact that Monrose will have to respect those blue flags and seems to be lapping considerably slow. We'll wait and see But it's definitely the case now. The hunt is on and Williams needs to use this clear air immediately. And is Harry Phillips going to respond? Well, he's got Paco and Lara all over the back of him here. And Lara, of course, is trying to unlap himself. And I think he just needs to be a bit patient and wait for Phillips to simply come into the pits here. Now, surely Phillips has got to come in at the end of this lap to cut off what is the potential undercut from Williams. To do anything else right now would be putting himself at risk of being jumped and then having to find the place on the final couple of laps through simply battling, as the track temperature has come down a further degree now. It's come down to 15. This is getting uncomfortable as we see Phillips immediately into the pits. He's reacting. He cannot stay out there. He has to cover this off. And as Paco Lara is now released, he has lost out massively as Paco Lara staying behind the battle for P2. He's now down in what is P9 and he is the best part of what is, as we see our time screens update, 3 seconds off the back of Martin Ulrik. Ulrik has just been simply running his own race here and Paco Lara is going to close up, but will it be enough as he makes his way on down? As we can see here in the chat. And then we've got K-Team saying that unless Mesa has a major fuddle, he's on for the win tonight indeed. And it's great racing as always. I can definitely agree with that. Great battle, says Max Maliart in the YouTube chat. We've got Emil Blaine as well saying this is a naval battle between the Boatleys, not a race. Well, definitely, and the shots were fired at long range, particularly with regards to this strategy. And speaking of it, we can see Harry Phillips coming out the pits now. And where's Gaz Williams? Gaz Williams has only just come out the final corner. So again, Harry Phillips has made this work on strategy. As we can see, there's Jesse Monroe's, and we can't even see Gaz Williams in the camera shot there, but as we look to the helicam, this may provide you a bit more perspective in terms of the gap between the two. There's Monroe's. We're not seeing Williams here, so Gaz Williams has had a poor outlap, and as a result, with that combined with the strategy, Phillips has kept P2 for the time being, but Gaz Williams is only 6 seconds down now and will look to go on the offensive here. So in this naval battle, as it's described in the chat here, between the two Boatleys, as they're commonly nicknamed because of their size and the fact you could argue they look like a British naval vessel, it is the situation whereby Harry Phillips seems to have struck twice and landed successfully. And now, can Williams come back? Can he come with a counter-offensive to sink Phillips' battleship? Oh, goodness me, the puns come quick and fast. But as we are in a sea of puns right now, it is a case that this circuit is still a bit of a sea and a wash with water, as we see Phillips now makes his way around and surely will be thinking to himself, all he's got to do in the remaining 10 minutes is bring this P2 home. It won't be the championship win he will have wanted, but it will be a P2 that he has had to work absolutely to the limit to bring home. But meanwhile, outside of that, we can see that Markus Fox, who's yet to pit from P4, he's got a gap of 12.6 seconds to Piringer, who's yet to pit, and Lux, who's just a bit further back. I think he's going to feel safe here as we see Paco Lara is making his way around. I thought Paco Lara was coming into the pits then. We had it come up on our timing screens that he was potentially coming in. I think Paco Lara's had a bit of a moment somewhere around on that lap, but he's definitely not pitting. That last lap from Lara, 2:11.8. Paco Lara's had a major moment, and that has meant that Ulrik is now 10 seconds up the road once again. And Paco Lara, I think, is just not able to push as much as he would like, and he's finding the car is proving too troublesome as they make their way on round. As we can see Ultra Gaming there in the YouTube chat saying expected the Bentleys to really take it to Andrés Mesa today. I think it's one of those situations where Andrés Mesa has just been on a different planet entirely, and Emil Blaine saying he couldn't resist making the naval jokes, and it's the case Max Miller saying shame on me for thinking that the Bentleys are cars. It's good to hear the humour in the chat right now, particularly in the YouTube chat. It seems to be the place to be. But as we see Paco Lara trying to soldier on after what has been a major moment or two behind Rainer Effenstedt, the TG Racing eSport driver, as Christian Ablasser, the other TG Racing eSport driver, chasing after him right now, and they are matching one another on lap times as it currently stands. They are also chasing after Sylvain Pastores, but to be fair, Pastores is lapping consistently, it would seem, in the mid to high 204s, and to be fair, Rainer Effenstedt and Christian Ablasser have been lapping a bit faster than him, but seem to be falling a little bit back. Now we'll wait and see. I think Sylvain Pastores will be safe from these guys who've yet to pit, remember. So that is where the delta really comes in, as we see the Rinaldi Racing driver here just trying to soldier on for a P10 here, which I think will be a brilliant driver. He's able to pull this off as he makes his way up towards turn number 11 once again. Although it does look as though that Ferrari has been in the wars to some extent in terms of damage picked up on the car. But meanwhile, with all this and Paco Lara trying to chase after Ulrik right now and doing everything, he's already closed down 1.2 seconds on this lap alone. He hasn't even finished a lap yet as he makes his way through turn number 13. Lara is absolutely giving it everything he's got. He knows that with 8 minutes to go, he wants to try and pick up that position as he misses the apex of 15. there, and I do think that right now Paco Lara, if this continues, particularly with the track limits penalties, it could, with the track limits violations, we could be seeing Sylvain Pastorius catch up come the end of the race in the battle for P9 ensuing. As meanwhile, further up the road, I can tell you that Piringer is yet to make his final pit stop, nor has Walter Lux, who's only 3 seconds back. We've also got Markus Fox, who's a further 13 seconds up the road from Piringer, as Piringer's now got the traffic of Andre Jacqueline to deal with, and as they make their way on through here, it's one of those situations where I think Piringer will be thinking to himself, you know what, I've done everything I can with this car. I don't think I'm going to get a better result. He's just going to simply try to bring it home and see what he can do come the very end of it. But as he makes his way through turn number 13 right now, you have to say that Piringer has really pulled that BMW M6 into the top 10 and made sure it stays there as best as he can. Now, I am hearing that in terms of lap times in the battle for P2, I don't think it's all over yet, ladies and gentlemen, because Phillips last time around was a 204.0, and we're just looking at Phillips right now as he makes his way through the Mercedes arena. Gaz Williams, on the other hand, who we just saw going through the back of the background of the shot there, it was on a 202.9. I think Gaz Williams is going on one final offensive here. It is the case with 7 minutes remaining. These guys have got 3 to 4 more laps, and based on that pace, the fact that Gaz Williams is lapping a second a lap faster compared to Phillips, and the gap is 4 seconds on the final lap, Gaz Williams could be there in the final portion of the lap and perhaps go for a move up into Vito. If it happens, this is going to be colossal come the very end, for the simple reason that Gaz Williams will have literally pushed his car to the absolute limit in terms of getting the lap time out of it. But right now Phillips is in control of this one, but I don't think Phillips wants to push the car too hard. I think he wants to make Williams come to him rather than overdo it, as we can see there riding very high on the exit curve of turn 8, and Gaz Williams meanwhile, as he makes his way up to the Schumacher S's here, is closing him down. He is hunting down Phillips once again, but can he close it up? That is the question. I think we have got 3 more laps after this one. It is going to be very close. As he makes his way through turn 11 there, Williams. But meanwhile, as we look from Williams to Fabio Kina here in P7, who's made his final pit stop, of course, we are still waiting on a good number of drivers to make their final stops, particularly Walter Lux, who is 55 seconds up the road, and I think will rejoin ahead of Fabio Kina here. We've also got Piringer and Markus Fox as well. I think any last-minute drama now is really going to come, as we are hearing that Paco Lara has had another moment out on circuit. Oh, goodness me, and look at the front of that McLaren. Something has definitely gone very wrong. I think he's been into the wall at the final corner, has Paco Lara, because that is damage to the front bumper, and even more so. And now I think Paco Lara is driving a wounded car here, and Sylvain Pastorius has gained as a result of it. And that last lap from Paco Lara was a 209.5, which would definitely indicate there has been a whack to the wall somewhere around the circuit as they make their way through the Mercedes arena here. And whilst it will be the case that Paco Lara will go hunting over Sylvain Pastorius come the very end, you can imagine the Ferrari driver right now with the opportunity to finish in P9 will want to try and hold that, because he has really worked for it and he's not put a foot wrong, as we hear that Walter Lux is now into the pits from what was P6 at the time. I don't think this is going to see him gain any more positions. I don't think he's going to lose any positions either. I think this is just a peaceful pit stop to the end of the race. But meanwhile, a bit further up the road, I can tell you that Markus Fox right now is in that P4 position, not really gaining, not really losing for anyone, and this is going to be another one of those days where, whilst he's not able to finish on the podium, he will be the best of rest in P4, and having done a phenomenal job of doing so over the course of this race right now. It didn't look as though it was going to start very well for Markus Fox. He does still, of course, need to make that final pit stop, and anything can happen in the pit. As we hear that Andrés Mesa is into the pits for his final stop, and the pit crew don't need to do anything crazy here. It just needs to be a simple stop. They don't need to do anything out of the ordinary. Just take their time with it. They've got plenty of time. They've got the best part of almost a minute over the rest of the field, and as a result, I think Andrés Mesa here will just gradually make his way into the pits and simply take it easy on the pit stop, as we see Harry Phillips versus Gaz Williams. Well, I can tell you that Gaz Williams is lapping in the mid 202s, a 202.6 last time around. Harry Phillips at 203.7 here, but that gap is not coming down enough for Gaz Williams to have a whole lap of battling. It's likely to be just the final half of the final lap, and the second half of the lap is where there's less room to go for moves. It's really, you want to catch up going onto a lap. That's where you want to be, because you've got the Mercedes arena, you've got the runs into turns 6, 7 and 8 where you can battle, and then you come to the second half of the lap where things start to become a bit more difficult. But meanwhile, Andrés Mesa has come out the pits. Our race leader has re-emerged. He's got Martin Ulrik behind him, but Ulrik is a lap down in P8. And at this point, I do think that Andrés Mesa is just simply cruising to the finish and cruising to a championship as he makes his way out of the Mercedes arena. 2 laps to go, including this one. The end is almost in sight. The light of the tunnel, which he has been running towards since the start from day one, inches ever closer. He's just got to keep it together as Markus Fox is into the pits. So is Ralf Piringer. They're reacting to Walter Lux. They're also reacting to one another, I'm sure, right now, and perhaps hoping that the other has a bad pit stop. But as they make their way across that limiter line and they cruise their way in, we hear that Christian Avlasser has taken his pit stop and then re-emerged in P13. He's come up behind Ant Brown and also his teammate Rainer Effenstedt, who's yet to pit. So we'll wait and see if Ant Brown's able to jump Effenstedt as well come Effenstedt's pit stop. He'll have to make it at the end of this lap, of course, because we won't have one more lap after this one. But as we can see, Avlasser making his way around through the Mercedes arena right now, and Ant Brown doing a very good job of trying to recover this race after what has been disaster after disaster, where he's been involved in incidents that have got nothing to do with him. He's just simply been the victim of a number of incidents after what was a brilliant qualifying session to recover to what we suspect is likely to be a P11 should he close down the gap to Effenstedt a little bit more, and Effenstedt just has the normal pit stop and not a special pit stop. It will be the case that Ant Brown right now will have done a very good job come the checkered flag of closing this one up as he makes his way down towards turn number 8. But meanwhile, in the battle between Phillips and Gaz Williams, we can see that gap's now down to 2 seconds as they come through turn number 12. They've got one more lap after this, and I think it will be the case as the race leader goes on to the final lap here that it's not going to be a battle for P2 until literally the last corner. But Andrés Mesa has taken us on to the final lap now. We've not got long to go. We've got 1.5 minutes of racing remaining plus the lap they're currently on. But as Avlasser comes out the pits, it is the case that he's come out behind that Brown, and we've got Rainer Effenstedt into the pits right now, and this is going to be critical for that P11 position. Can they nail the pit stop, or will it be the case that instead it's going to be Ant Brown who comes on through? Well, Ant Brown right now is making his way through 13 and heading up towards 14 here. He's on the charge. He's on the mission, trying to close up and trying to get that position back as he makes his way through Vidal here. And it's a bit of a smooth run, although he did go a little bit wide of apex there. He comes up towards the final corner. Meanwhile, it's going to be Effenstedt who's already up on the jacks. They're doing the work of the car right now as we see Ant Brown, meanwhile, coming out of the final corner here. I do think that Ant Brown's got the position as he comes across that timing line. And yes, he has got the position done, I think, or as he knows, Effenstedt's come out the pits here, and he's going to be jumped just about by Ant Brown, who's gotten the move done. But meanwhile, speaking of getting it done, as he makes his way through the Schumacher S's right now with half a lap to go, he's been in a world of his own over the course of this race. He's 33 seconds clear of the rest of the field, and it is one of those situations where it has been a championship built on tenacity, built on consistency. It's been built on literally everything you'd expect from the best of the best in this series, and he's shown it time and time again, whether it was at the start of the season, the midpoint, when he's had his setbacks, he's come through and shown what he can do. And as he makes his way through 13 and 14, he's already flashing his lights. He knows that he's making it to the end right now. He comes up to 14 and 15. It's the chicane, and it's one more corner to go. He can smell the champagne from here. He can smell himself sipping it as he comes to the final corner. It is going to be 4 wins in 8 races, and it will be Andrés Mesa who takes the win in the season finale and takes the championship in season 2 of the NXTGEN Racing European GT3 Series. Meanwhile, behind, as they make their way charging down towards Vidal's chicane, it will be Harry Phillips who has to hold off the fast charging Gaz Williams. There's not much time left. Can he hold on as he makes his way through turns 14 and 15? He only needs to nail these 2 corners plus one more and make sure that Gaz Williams can't get the run on him. I don't think Gaz Williams has got the time of day to do it, and as he makes his way through the final corner, Gaz Williams locks up. It will be second place for Harry Phillips, and a brilliant drive from the Wild Things Racing driver. He couldn't take it to the Distinct GG driver, but he will come home a brilliant P2 and secure P2 in the championship. A fantastic drive. Gaz Williams with a phenomenal P3 in the end, bringing home a brilliant result, although he couldn't quite bring the P2. And we can already see some victory donuts there from Andrés Mesa. But meanwhile, with the rest of the field still coming on through right now, we can see here that next up on the lead lap, it's going to be Markus Fox here, who comes through to complete his race. And this has been a brilliant drive as well from Fox, having qualified in the bottom half of the top 10. He's had to fight for it, he's had to keep it consistent. And that's the one thing that Markus Fox should be known for, his consistency in the Porsche 991 as he comes through the final corner. It will will be a P4 for Markus Fox to wrap up what has been a brilliant season for the driver as he comes across that line. And then it will be Ralf Piringer who in P5 as he comes through the final corner will secure P3 in the championship for the Jockey's Visor powered by BMW team as he makes his way out the final corner. The German doing a fantastic job to hold off Waterlux come the bell. Waterlux in the end finishing in P6, a great drive from the McLaren driver. And then we have got Fabio Kina here who is going to come home in a P7. But before that, Sylvain Pastorius, a shout out to Sylvain Pastorius for a P9, a brilliant drive for the Rinaldi racing driver. Martin Ulrik finished in P8 in the end, I believe, unless he's had to pit right at the end, but I think he has met the checkered flag. And then Fabio Kina here comes home in a P7, at which he'll be very pleased with a consistent drive from the Swiss from Tamir Racing. And we can see all the results there. Paco Lara in the end coming home in P10, but Andrés Mesa very happy as we see there doing a little bit of showing off to the crowd and now parking the car back up. But a brilliant drive from all of our drivers, and it's now time for us to take a brief break before we head to those post-race podium interviews. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back in approximately 3 to 5 minutes. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, very shortly we will be getting underway with our post-race podium interviews, but just before we do, we can already see there in the chats we have got a huge number of individuals celebrating the fact that Andrés Mesa was able to win the championship there. And we can also see, well, we've got so many messages from people in the YouTube chat. I'm not going to be able to go through them all, I'm afraid, but we can see there we've got Distinct Hosky. We've also got what looks to be there Felix Schedler. We've also got Tristan Cortez. We've oh, goodness me, we've got a lot of individuals here. VLX Maverick as well. And we've also got there, oh, my apologies, as I just keep on going through, we've got Max Manuel there celebrating his teammate getting at third place in the championship. We can also see there we do have, by the looks of things, oh goodness me, there's just so many messages here to celebrate for, particularly for Team Distinct GG. But without further ado, we can also see we've got over 9,000 RPM there in the Twitch chat. Let's get Andrés Mesa into the interview room box and have a chat to him about the race and his championship. Hello, Andrés. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Paul.
Andrés, firstly, congratulations on an absolutely fantastic drive today. And before we come on to your championship, which definitely congratulations as well on winning the championship, and we'll come back to that very shortly. Just the drive itself, leading from start to finish, winning in the end by almost, I think, 30 seconds clear of the field, much like at Paul Ricard. How does it feel to have taken such a dominant win in perhaps the most pressured race of the season?
Well, it feels amazing. Yeah, it's been a fantastic race for me. Yeah, probably the best of the season.
Oh, it's definitely, from our perspective, one of your finest drivers, if not your finest drive of the season. And I can see in the YouTube chat in particular, we've got a huge number of individuals from your team at Distinct GG, all cheering you on and happy to hear from you now. We've got Distinct Maverick. We've also got there Chris McKenna. I think we've also got Tristan Cortez. There's so many of them, I can't name them all, to be honest, but they're all very happy to see you take the win.
Yeah, that's...
Any words to them, firstly?
Let's go, Distinct. GG. It's great to hear they're all there. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Now, just breaking your race down, qualifying, very strong in qualifying, and we saw it in the initial practice session where you set the, I think it was the 201.1, and an even stronger lap in terms of the qualified session. Was that everything you had out there, or was there even more? Because you just looked untouchable. 3 tenths clear of Gaz Williams in P2.
Well, to be fair, I think I had a couple of tenths more. So, yeah. Still was a very good lap, yeah.
Oh, indeed, a phenomenal lap. And then translating into the race itself, we did see that Gaz Williams seemed to have quite a good start versus yourself, but we saw you go quite heavily defensive into the arena. Just take us through that opening lap.
Yeah, just he got a very good start, yeah, and he got alongside. I just held the inside, and on T1, it's really difficult to overtake around the outside. But yeah, he was very fast at the beginning.
Indeed, and then once you'd managed to hold him off through the Mercedes arena, was it just the case of push as hard as possible and just break away, leave it to everyone else to battle?
Yeah, pretty much. I wasn't taking it easy at all. I was pushing quite a lot. I had a couple of moments in the Schumacher S, well, that I nearly lost it actually, but yeah, everything went well in the end.
Well, indeed, we did see a couple of times that the gap between yourself and the rest of the field did come down a bit, and we suspected there might have been some mistakes. When those mistakes occurred, did you decide to back it down at all? Was it just a case of, okay, I'm just going to go straight back onto that pace?
Well, yeah, I had to think about what I was doing a bit more, yeah, and just relax a little bit.
Well, definitely, because the consistency in your lap times as well. Well, I mean, I think for the opening stint in particular, we didn't see you set a 2:03 until I think it was lap 22 on that opening stint. Was your target to stay in the 2:02s for as long as possible?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was. The Aston was an absolute joy to drive here, and it was easy to maintain a good pace through the whole stint. Yeah.
And then looking towards the end, once you'd had your pit stops, just take us through that feeling on that final lap. We saw you flashing your lights as you was going through turn 13 up towards the Vidal chicane. Just what was going through your head?
I was just enjoying the moment, yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. And now I should congratulate you on winning the championship and what has been an absolutely titanic battle between yourself and Harry Phillips throughout. I mean, the two of you going into tonight, 6 points between the two of you, 3 wins apiece, 6 podiums between the two of you, and both of you, when you weren't finishing on the podium, you both finished P4. What are your thoughts on what has been a very tightly fought championship?
It's been fantastic fight, yeah, between Harry and myself. He's an excellent driver, I must say, and very fair. Such a yeah.
Oh goodness me! And by the sounds of it, you sound quite exhausted, so we won't keep you too much longer. But one final question we do have: over the course of the whole season, what has been your favourite moment or your happiest moment?
Favorite, I mean, I enjoyed a lot Brands Hatch, the fight in Brands Hatch, although it didn't end up well, but that was insane, that fight. Maybe happiest, well, this one tonight, of course.
Oh, indeed, your crowning win, a crowning race, and really, I'd just like to say thank you for joining us in the interview room, and congratulations, Andrés, on not just taking your 4th win in the series tonight, but also the overall championship win, a well-deserved champion. And indeed, I think everybody tuning in would agree with me and say you were, at the end of the day, a step above the field. Harry Phillips came very close, but over the last 2 races in particular, you've just shown how you could take it up a level, and you made yourself, dare I make a pun out of this, distinct from everybody else. And well, I think that your guys in the Distinct GG team are going to be very pleased.
I love that. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to participate in this championship. It's been great. Yeah, thank you very much, Paul.
That's no problem at all. Congratulations, and hopefully, depending on what you're racing soon, hopefully we'll see you come back in a future season or series, and we'll cross paths again soon.
Yeah, of course. Hopefully I can join next season, yeah.
Oh, but that would be brilliant to see you out on circuit again. But until then, enjoy the championship win. Enjoy the, well, virtual champagne, unless you've got a bottle there with you right now. Who knows?
Yeah, not alcoholic, but yeah, I've got a bottle next to me.
But congratulations.
Right. Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much.
Hearing there from Andrés Mesa, who I think might be a little bit emotional right now, whilst he's perhaps not been the man of many words when we've interviewed in the past. I think right now he's absolutely exhausted, and well, I think he's just very, very pleased that it all came together in the season finale. And I think for him right now, it's going to be one of those moments where it's going to just gradually settle in. And with regards to his race, he was in a world of his own. In qualifying, 3/10 faster than the rest of the field. And then over the course of the race, after that initial battle with Gaz Williams, to be able to pull out such a gap after the opening lap and just stay within the 2:02 so consistently, it was a phenomenal drive for Andrés Mesa. And indeed, I can see, again, in the chat, everybody very, very up and down with regards to the drive from Andrés Mesa. But we must now go from Andrés Mesa to our runner-up in the championship, and that is, of course, Harry Phillips, who I think would love to say a few words with regards to what has been a fantastic campaign and a very, very close-fought campaign between himself and Andrés Mesa. So we'll just give me 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll get Harry Phillips into the interview room. Give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen. I believe we have now got Harry Phillips coming into the interview room. Hello, Harry. Can you hear me?
Hey, Paul.
Harry, a P2 which was very valiantly fought for. I appreciate it wasn't perhaps the result you wanted today, but still a fantastic drive from start to finish. How do you feel about the second place at the Nürburgring today?
That's all I wanted, honestly. I mean, that was all I was going to get, to be honest. I mean, you could see in the last two races that Mesa was just another level, honestly. I mean, yeah, I'm just dead happy to get P2. Nice fitting finish to get P2 in the championship as well.
Well, definitely, that aligns with what many are saying in the YouTube chat right now with regards to, particularly from Chris McKenna, who wasn't able to race tonight. Congrats to Harry, excellent racer, and nice to see the Bentley, or the Boatley, in its naval battle, doing bits at the front of the field. And we can also see that many, Emil Blaine as well, who wasn't able to race, saying that you gave a brilliant, brilliant fight with not just Gaz Williams tonight, but also against Andrés Mesa over the course of the entire season. But before we come on to the championship itself, I just want to dissect a little bit of tonight. And starting off with qualifying, didn't seem as though qualifying really came together for yourself. You've started in P3 in the end. Was there more time out there, or was it a case that it just wasn't the right sort of composition tonight in that qualifying session?
Oh, I think there was probably another 10th in me, to be honest. I probably could have leveled it with Williams, to be honest. But yeah, it was really tricky to tie a lap together in the wet. I mean, I'm not by any means a Rainmeister. I'm not particularly strong in the wet. I'm not particularly strong at Nürburgring. So put those two together, I'm not going to get a very good qualifying result. But yeah, I mean, I was fairly happy considering how close the field was at the top.
Oh, definitely. And then translating that into the race, it did seem as though you were on a slightly different approach to the race compared to Gaz Williams and Andrés Mesa, but particularly focusing on Williams here. Whereas they were lapping in the 202s, you were lapping consistently in the low to mid 203s. Did you decide to load the car, I should say, up with more fuel compared to others around you? What was your strategy?
Well, this is where I think I might be the only person doing this. I loaded the car up to the max, and I did not take tyres for the entire 2-hour race. So I double, or technically even triple stinted the tyres, because I knew I had a significant pace disadvantage as soon as I started seeing Gaz and Mesa just drift up the road, and they were by my first pit stop they were over 20 seconds away. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to take a risk, because I had a massive gap behind me to Ulrik. And I think even Ulrik had a bit of an incident at some point, because I saw that I was lapping him at one point as well. But yeah, I double, triple stinted the tyres, and I kept, not slow, but I kept a very steady, safe, tyre-friendly pace throughout the entire race. Consistency over pace, I think. And I came out just in front of Gaz at both pit stops, and that was really what I was aiming for. Very tight margins though, only 2 seconds at one point.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of tight margins, I mean, that approach, firstly, I must say, to triple stint a set of wets was absolutely phenomenal. And the consistency shown by yourself, I think, is something which many will be inspired by. But then translating those tight margins and that consistency into that battle with Gaz Williams, it looked as though every time Gaz Williams got close, he just couldn't find that final 10% to get close to yourself, and he was relying on you to make a mistake. And whilst you may have had a couple of little twitchy moments here and there, particularly coming through Vidal, there was one instance where you had a bit of a twitchy moment, it never seemed as though he could get to you. How did you manage that? Because that is absolutely phenomenal pressure, and that was the best part of 10 to 15 laps.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't a calming moment, I have to say. I was just really focusing on going slow through the corners, because I probably could have gone a bit faster and kept a good gap. I mean, at one point I did manage a low 2:03, which I thought was pretty quick actually, considering how old those tires were at the end of the race. But yeah, I mean, it was all about the exits for me. I mean, I don't know if you noticed in the stream, but every exit I was pulling away pretty quickly. And that was just a case of going really slow through the corners and getting a really late apex at pretty much all of the important turns, like turn 4, the last turn in particular as well. I've only had to make about 2 or 3 defensive moves, yeah, so it all worked perfectly, at least from my perspective.
Oh, it did. And then coming on to that final pit stop in the end, when you came out of the pits just quite a bit ahead of Gaz Williams, I think it was in the end the delta between the two of you was 6 seconds. What was your thoughts at that point? Do you think, right, I've got it all done, or is the pressure still on?
Well, yeah, I definitely thought it was still on. I mean, I knew the gaps. If I had a gap, it was going to come down quick to anyone who was behind me. Just simply because of how... I mean, I was looking at the times every lap just to see how much slower I was going. And at one point it was over a second a lap slower. And I knew, even if I had a sizable gap, that it was going to come down to the last lap or two. I was not entirely sure if Gaz was going to pit longer on his final pit stop, and it turned out he did. He might have had to take a bit more fuel, and that was the deciding factor. Really, that was the most important thing. If he only took 1 liter like I did, he would have come out in front of me, no doubt.
Well, it was definitely a very well played strategy, and then in the end, whilst he caught up to you come the final couple of corners on the final lap, you're able to come across the line in P2. And with that second place, securing P2 in the championship and coming onto your championship whilst it wasn't the win. Firstly, let me say congratulations for a brilliant championship fight between yourself and Andrés Mesa, and to come home second place in the end, I think is no poor reflection on your own driving ability. How do you feel about the second place when everything's considered?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm thrilled with it. It's interesting if you reflect back on the championship, just how important every single race is and every single point. I mean, this championship came down like right down to the wire, honestly. It obviously didn't turn my way at the end, because these last 2 races have not been strong for me. Paul Ricard, not at all a strong track for me. The Aston is incredibly fast there as well. And of course a wet Nürburgring, 2 of the worst possible conditions you could throw at me in the Bentley, I think. Like Donington, I mean, the first race, that miscalculation in the pit where I accidentally took tyres and lost 30 seconds. And that cost me first place, I think. And then Brands Hatch, of course, that was super intense with Andrés Mesa, and me having a bit of an incident, and that also costing me a win. It's interesting to look back at how even closer this championship could have been, given those 2 races having slightly different results. But yeah, I mean, even though a win could have been on the cards if I had gotten those 2 races spot on, I'm absolutely thrilled with P2. It's been fantastic.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. And as I was saying to Andrés only moments ago, what separated you two in the end going into tonight wasn't the fact that one of you had more wins than the other. You both had 3 wins. It wasn't about the number of podiums, because you both had 3 podiums on top of those 3 wins. It wasn't about your scores outside of the podium, where you both, when you finished outside of the podium, have finished with 1 P4. It was down to where you both placed on the podium over the course of the race. And for it to come down like that shows an absolutely brilliant and tenacious fight between the 2 of you. And having had the chance to briefly reflect, I'd like to ask, what would be your most enjoyable or your favourite moment from this series?
Oh, I mean, it's hard to say, because every single race has been absolutely incredible. I mean, if I had to choose one, it might be Zolder, just because that was such a dominant win from me. Even in the wet, which I honestly wasn't expecting. I think I said at the time that was my first wet win in the Bentley. And I haven't been sim racing long. It's only been since January this year. So honestly, this championship, I haven't got a lot of races under my belt, but this championship takes them all by far. every single race action-packed. It's been down to the wire. It's impossible to choose. I'm looking forward to the next season.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear, and you've definitely got a lot of admirers from your driving. I can see there's a number of guys from the Distinct GG team tuning in on YouTube, and they're saying, particularly Distinct Maverick, saying great season from yourself, Harry, fantastic driving. The same from Chris McKenna as well. Congrats to Harry, excellent racer, and nice to see the Bentley doing great battling at the front of the field and bits at the front of the field. And I think you have definitely, whilst you didn't win the championship, you've won the hearts of a good number of people with regards to the valiant fight you've put up, and to hear that you're potentially coming back in future seasons. We really look forward to seeing you back out on circuit. And one final question, if I may. Looking ahead, we've got the Intercontinental GT Championship coming up, come the end of November, 5 rounds. Do you think we could see you there?
I think you can count on it. I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, that would be absolutely fantastic. Well, until then, congratulations once again on the second place day and the second place in the championship. A brilliant drive from yourself, and we wish you all the best and look forward to seeing you back on circuit in the near future.
Cheers, Paul, and thanks everyone at NextGen. It's been a pleasure. See you next time.
All the best. It's been our pleasure. Hearing there from Harry Phillips, a very happy man with regards to his performance today and also the second place in the championship. And to be fair, you could hear there in Harry Phillips, I think it's one of those moments where I think part of him will feel that obviously losing the championship he's quote unquote lost, but I think what he's won in terms of the performance and also the drives at Paul Ricard and also at the Nürburgring, 2 very strong drives in situations which weren't to his personal liking, and to overcome those, I think he's walking away from this one feeling as though he is an ultimate winner. Much like Andrés Mesa will feel he's the winner of the championship, I think Harry will feel as though he's a winner in terms of achieving a good number of personal achievements or milestones in this series, and that's fantastic to hear, and also to see with regards to the fact he just kept his head down and got on with it. And speaking of someone who kept his head down and got on with it, let's have a chat to Gaz Williams, who I think really we could have expected, if he was with us in the series since the start, would have been a massive title contender. But without further ado, let's get him in the commentary box. Hello Gaz, can you hear me?
Hello, yeah, can indeed.
Gaz, a brilliant drive today, finishing in third in the end after a titanic battle of Harry Phillips. How do you feel about your race today?
Yeah, it was a pretty fun one, to be honest. Shame couldn't get the P2, but yeah, I was pretty happy with P3 still. Yeah, it's just nice to have, like, some battles, isn't it, on track, so...
Most definitely. And just taking it a step back before the race itself, in qualifying, being the fastest Bentley, taking that accolade at the Nürburgring by a tenth of a second over Harry Phillips, I have to ask, was there a little bit more time out there? Because you seem to be getting stronger and stronger as the session went on.
Yeah, the actual last lap, I was just over 2 tenths up, and I think it was just coming up to the S, just dipped a wheel on the gravel and lost pretty much it all. And I think I just improved just by about a tenth, because I had a bit more at the chicane. I just went for all out sort of thing just to see if I could do anything. And, but yeah, it was. I didn't think it would be quite that fast, the Bentley, to be honest. I thought it would be a bit further back down the grid, so I was a bit shocked to even get a P2. So.
Well, it was a brilliant qualifying result, and then coming on to the race itself, we saw you go quite aggressive in terms of trying to get ahead of Andrés Mesa down into turn 1, but you defended hard through the Mercedes arena. Was the idea to just get ahead and try and back him up into Harry Phillips? What was going through your mind at the start?
Have some fun. Don't know, to be honest. Yeah, just try to get the slight jump on him at the start, but it was pretty even. I think maybe I was just edging slightly ahead coming down to the braking zone, but I wasn't sure exactly where to brake. I hadn't really tried the start in them sort of conditions, so just went a bit cautious. Looking in your mirror sort of thing, because being in the wet as well, you never know if someone missed the brakings, and yeah, that'd be that, wouldn't it, sort of thing. But yeah, I thought if I could try and get ahead of him into turn 1, I could maybe do something, but yeah, I thought once he'd got ahead, I probably wouldn't be able to take him on track, sort of thing, in a pass, because it's, as you seen when I caught Harry up at the end, it was just, I couldn't really do anything, couldn't really pass him.
I could see that. And coming on to your battle with Harry Phillips, which was an absolutely brilliant battle through and through, it seems as though when you were in clear air, you could catch up to Harry Phillips by the best part of a second a lap. But then as soon as you got to about 5 attempts, it was almost as if, like what we see in Formula 1 these days, you ended up just hitting a sort of wall, whether it was hot air or alternatively just running that close. And that seemed to just stem your performance. What was happening as you got close? Was there a sort of performance issue? Was it, say, downforce was being lost? Just take us through that, because you were very close at some points. We thought you were going to go for the move.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It was just, the grip just slightly dulled off, so I wasn't quite as able to, carry so much speed through the corners without, the front end just washing slightly wide, sort of thing. Probably, I did get quite close at one point, but it was a couple of points actually, I think, down into turn 1. But to be honest, I wasn't actually sure what the points were like because I know they were battling for the championship, but I wasn't sure who was leading. I thought, I ain't gonna try and force the issue too much in case, it's like catch like a puddle or something daft, and I didn't want to rear end him, especially if he was leading, and take him out of the race, and sort of thing. So I thought, just if I can pass him, I can pass him. If not, it's one of them. Cause I was just having a bit of fun, to be honest, at that point. I wouldn't realise once I caught him up and I couldn't pass him straight away, I thought this is going to be pretty difficult. And I'm guessing he took the tyres all the way through to the end. Whereas I obviously changed on the first stop, I think it was, yeah.
We are seeing in the YouTube chat right now, we've had a message from Benji Racing. I believe, I can't tell what the emoji's meant to be, but I think it's pretty much praise for saying you're a fantastic driver with regards to the battling and also for the driving. And I do have to ask, in that final stint, after you came out the pits and saw there's the 6-second gap between yourself and Harry Phillips, what was going through your mind at that point? Because you closed down very rapidly, but there just didn't seem to be enough time to get the move when you were right there come the final corner.
Yeah, just done it. Just tried to give it everything. The one lap actually nearly lost it at the top of the S. It went one way and then nearly went the other. So when I was about 3 seconds back. So yeah, I dropped about 6/10 that lap. I still gained on him about 3 or 4 tenths. Probably would have been put me right on the back of him, probably going on to that last lap, but I think unless he made a mistake, I don't think I probably would have been able to pass him, even though I think he looked like he was struggling a bit with the tyres. So yeah, it was still pretty fun though, to be honest.
Oh, definitely. It looks like you're having fun out there. And then moving from the race to your championship self, obviously you joined us midway through the series and immediately left your mark on everyone with regards to a brilliant performance at Monza, and you never really stopped from there. Once you've only had sort of half the season, what's been your favourite part of the races that you have been a part of?
It's just having the battles with other people on track, isn't it? When at just that race there, once we got a bit of a gap, to P1 and then P3, it was just, it doesn't get a bit boring, but then it's just like, that's that, isn't it? I guess what now? Just keep doing the same lap times or what? So, as long as I'm in a battle with someone, Paul Ricard, even though I couldn't overtake them, McLaren, it was just, pushing all the time, trying to find somewhere where you could pass. Monza was a really great race as well, sort of thing. Enjoyed that one. So yeah, I've enjoyed all the races that I've been in, sort of thing. So, and
then looking ahead, enjoying those battles, could we expect you to potentially be coming back for future battles in, say, the Intercontinental Championship that's coming up at the end of November?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, might come back for that.
Well, we'd definitely love to see you back out on the circuit, Gaz, but until then, congrats on the P3 today and what has been a brilliant but rather short championship charge from yourself. But until next time, we hope you cross paths with us again, but congratulations on a brilliant drive today.
Nice one, cheers.
Hearing that from Gaz Williams, who just enjoying the battling there, and that being his most enjoyed part over the course of the season with respect to the back and forth battles with other drivers, whether it's Paul Ricard with the McLarens or today with his fellow Bentley driver of Harry Phillips, and enjoying it all the way down to Letter. And I do hope, personally, I do hope that we see Gaz Williams from the start to the finish of the Intercontinental Championship that will be running it starting in late November, for the simple reason I think Gaz has got a lot of pace and he would definitely go well over the course of all of the races. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that marks the conclusion of our post-race podium interviews, and it is now time for us to wrap up what has been a season, a fantastic season, and indeed the season finale tonight. Thank you so very much for watching from start to finish, and if you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, why not check us out at either our official racing website, that is nextgenracing.co.uk, alternatively the Next Gen Racing Facebook group. If you go onto facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing, you'll find us there. Also, before we forget, a big thank you to our partners without whom this would not have been possible from start to finish, the SimGrid and also Coach Dave Academy. If you want to know more about them, you can check them out at their websites listed there. But before we say goodbye, we need to look ahead to the next season. And now it will be the case that come Monday the 1st of November 2021, we will have our sign-ups open for the Intercontinental Challenge Championship. So it'll be a GT3 Championship focused on Intercontinental circuits. And as we had corrected in our ear going into tonight, it will be the case that it will be 5 rounds starting the 23rd of November 2021. It will be 5 Tuesdays back to back, a weekly basis, 1 race a week, similar format to what you've had in season 2 here, with a championship that will feature a grid of up to 50 GT3 class cars, so 50 sign-ups available, 5 rounds of racing, and there will be a cash prize pool up for grabs. The specific prizes in terms of the values will be are to be confirmed based on the number of individuals who do sign up. The sign-up cost, as you saw in the earlier publicity, was $16 for the 5 races, so you're effectively getting a race for just over $3. It's a nice, cheap format, and sign-ups will be open on Monday, the 1st of November 2021. A whole variety of GT3 class cars will be available, and we will be racing at Silverstone, Kalami, and the South African circuit there, Bathurst, Laguna Seca, and also, so not Silverstone, my apologies, Suzuka, not Silverstone, and also Spa. More information is going to be released, but do keep your eyes out. If you are interested, keep perusing the Next Gen Racing official website and our Facebook group, alternatively the Next Gen Racing Discord, for further information. And also this series, in terms of the Intercontinental Challenge, will be live stewarded. We'll be bringing back the stewards from Next Gen and also the SimGrid. And on top of that as well, it will be live broadcasting. I'm pleased to announce that I will be in the commentary box once again to bring you all the racing action for a 3rd season of Next Gen Racing ACC. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have been Next Gen Racing. We will be back come the end of November. Save the date, Tuesday the 23rd of November, for the kickoff of the Intercontinental Challenge Championship GT3 class racing. But I have been Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit. We have been Next Gen Racing. This has been Season 2 of the Next Gen Racing European GT3 Championship. It has been a pleasure to bring you this from start to finish. I bid you all a wonderful night. But until next time, as always, thank you for tuning in, and remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.